I'm scared. I'm very scared my internet's not gonna be okay. Oh goodness gracious. Should I ask him to play ranked Fortnite? Would that appease you people? Huh? Would that make you feel okay? I will ask him if he wants to play ranked Fortnite with me. Lock in? I do need to lock in. I need to. There will be no Percharskis. Alright? There will be nothing like that. Hey!
Hey.
How's it going?
Hey, not too bad. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely. Absolutely I can.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, I'm using my wireless microphone. Yeah, okay, good. Are you live right now? Are we live right now?
I am. I know you're a big slur sayer. No, I'm sorry.
I can't see your camera.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Do you not have it turned on in the
No.
There we go.
There
we go.
Why? Sorry. There we go.
Nice to meet you.
It's digitally, of course. Sorry. Can I tell you something?
Yo.
I actually I've known of you for a while. A few years back, I was at the thrift store.
Okay.
And it was a very weird thrift store. And I purchased something for a few dollars. And as soon as I got out of the store, I asked myself, well, I don't know why the fuck I did that at all, actually. But I thought about, like, you know how, like, when you're younger, you think about yourself, like, talking to people you like or whatever. I was like, I think if I were to do anything with this in, like, years, I would give this to JJ Mccullough. That's what I would do. And I have it right now in my hand.
Oh boy.
If our paths ever cross, I will give this to you, but I will show it to you for now. And hopefully maybe you can explain it a little bit. It's a knick-knack, little doodad. It says rub out the tax.
Okay.
Oh my God.
It's an eraser in the shape of, and we know who that's in the shape of, right?
With the chin, Jesus Christ, yes we do. And on the inside.
Very nice.
So, I don't know.
So you explain this to the viewer what this is and what the significance of it is.
I was hoping you could. I know of Brian Mulroney. I did a video on him, but I don't know what this is. It says GST on it, so I'm guessing maybe that's from sales tax.
Yeah. So Brian Mulroney, for those who don't know, was the Conservative Prime Minister of Canada from 1984 to 1993, and he led a very reformist conservative government in a lot of ways, and a lot of things he did were very controversial. And one of the controversial things he did was introduce a national sales tax, a goods and service tax known as the GST. The passage of the GST was very furiously opposed by the Liberal Party. It was one of the very rare cases in which a piece of legislation was held up in the Canadian Senate, which, as we know, is normally a kind of rubber stamp sort of thing. And this was a source of great drama at the time, the degree to which Mulroney was really trying to shove this tax through by hook or by crook, this tax reform. And and then sort of opposition to the GST was a huge part of sort of anti-Mulroneyism on the left for a long time. It was a huge part of sort of the Liberal Party's brand in opposition. And then when they eventually ran against the Conservatives, which was, we were going to repeal the GST and all of this, which of course they didn't do.
They're not going to
ultimately, do that. A lot of economists would sort of say that shifting to a universal sales tax was a more kind of like efficient reform to the tax system than the previous sort of tax regime we had, which from what I understand was like much more based on sort of sectoral taxing and I don't know, some sort of archaic way. So, and then of course the Liberal government kept the GST in place, and all subsequent governments of either stripe have kept the GST in place. I think, GST politics have really kind of declined a lot, even in my own lifetime. Like I remember when I was young, opposition to the GST was still kind of something that was a kind of cross-partisan rallying cry. A lot of conservatives never liked the GST either, and that played a role in why right-wing opposition to Mulroney grew. When Harper was in charge, he cut the GST, I think, twice. So the GST that we pay today is lower than it was in the 80s and 90s. And so that, anyway, the point is that little artifact, I think, is a kind of relic of a time in which opposition to the GST was kind of intertwined with opposition to Brian Mulroney, who was, a very unpopular prime minister overall. So It's it's kind of a fun little anachronism. That's a good find.
Yeah, I found it for a few bucks, and look at the condition on this thing, bro. The one on
It
top
is
of
pristine.
it was in like it was like white and crusted. Like no. I went digging in there. I got like a few diseases probably, and I pulled that up for a couple. I think I handed over like a toonie maybe, and I got that. So very
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, yeah.
And I
No, but there
did.
was like a lot of that kind of thing back in the day. Like just like you look at, I mean, like this is sort of problem with Canada today compared to Canada of 40 years ago. Was like in the old days, like there was just like a lot more of this kind of like playful stuff in Canadian politics, like kind of
Mhm.
satirical knickknacks and souvenirs and comics and even like board games and bumper stickers and stuff. And now, of course, I guess like the closest we have are like those "fuck Trudeau" banners or something. Like politics has just become so crude and crass and
Yeah.
blunt, and there's none of that kind of impishness.
I did find it in Winnipeg of all places, and
Well, that tracks.
I don't know. You definitely know this, but my do you know why the Reform Party was started? The issue?
I believe that one of the big issues at the time was that Mulrooney, again, gave a contract for uh, it was for Berling Airlines of some sort to a company in Quebec rather than a company in your province.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you
And
tell this story in better detail.
I could not. I honestly, God, I couldn't tell you this story in better detail. I was researching a
Oh,
video when I came upon this on like Wikipedia actually. um,
uh-oh.
yeah. No, I don't. I try not to use Wikipedia, but I mean, if I'm just trying to get like the rundown for something, I
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
And I found out that the place, I was like, I read it, and I was like, and then I thought about it for 2 seconds, and my mom actually worked there.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and so I found out through trying to make a video on, I forgot what it was, but I found out through trying to research a video that like, oh yeah, my mom worked at that place, and then like, yeah. So what I'm saying is, it's basically her fault completely. That it all comes back from her.
I'm trying to remember. I can't remember the names of the companies involved. If it was
I don't.
Bombardier
I
or if
don't.
it was
Yeah, I don't know if it was.
Airbus or
I don't know if it was like a company. I just remember that it said like Bristol Aerospace, which was the plant or whatever. That like, yeah, that's what it was.
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. No, that was it wasn't the only reason why the Reform Party came into existence, but it was
Mhm.
definitely a big one and would have been a very galvanizing issue in your province specifically.
Yeah.
Right? It's like the reason why the Reform Party grew was because in those days, this is the sort of the right-wing opposition to Mulrooney. And it grew in different parts of the country based on different sort of circumstances. In Alberta, the issue is obviously very bound up in like oil-related stuff. And
I don't really hear much
British
about that
Columbia.
from them. Are you sure about this? Are you really?
Yeah,
I'll take your
the
word for it.
Albertans care about oil. Yeah, I've heard some vague rumblings that might be something stuck in their craw to some degree. Do you feel like you've lived in Manitoba your whole life, right?
Mostly.
Mostly, yeah.
Yes.
But do you have a strong sense of yourself as a Western Canadian? Do you think that that's something that animates your political identity at all?
I've had more animation come from me just having like the argument, like, is it really Western? And it's like, I mean, yeah, it kind like it is, I guess.
Manitoba? You
Yeah.
think it's disputed, would you say?
A little bit, yeah. A big thing with like, I guess, Western provinces is like one of the things that they're the most angry about would be like equalization payments, and Manitoba's like one of the, it might be the largest like per capita recipient of it.
Oh yeah,
because we're so poor and no one lives here.
Yeah.
But there is definitely a stark difference, like going out to more Western, where you see like, okay, I see it a little bit now. Like there's a little bit of a difference, but I'd say it's not really like, I think most people are like normaler, I guess, if I could say that. I don't know.
Normal or relevant or
Yeah.
compared to the Albertans or the Saskatchewaners, yeah.
A little bit, yeah. A little bit.
Yeah.
But
it's interesting. I mean, like I definitely think of Manitoba as like, yeah, more like Ontario than it's like Saskatchewan or Alberta.
mhm.
I remember growing up, I don't know if this is as true today, But I remember like growing up learning that like Manitoba was one of the most politically competitive parts of Canada. Like in some ways, it's like the ultimate kind of like, swing state. Like that in any election, like Alberta or Manitoba has like this long sort of tradition of like, they elect roughly equal amount of liberals, conservatives, and NDP. And so there's a kind of sense that like the province doesn't have like this very rigid kind of like left or right political identity the way that some other parts of Canada do, and certainly the way that if you think of the rest of Western Canada as being very conservative, but Manitoba, was kind of like the swingy part of that alliance.
I mean, God bless my glorious leader Wab Kinew of Wab Kinewistan with like his 200% approval rating.
Yes,
it's not. I don't think that's gonna change anytime relatively soon. But like now that I think about it, it is probably a little bit. Oh, sorry, my bad. Oh goodness gracious! I have the stream alert going for when people donate, and someone just donated, and I remembered that the sound effect is Justin Trudeau getting real close to the mic and saying "speaking moistly." I'm so sorry about that.
I can't hear it.
Oh, thank God. It is. I'm so sorry. It is a little bit more competitive than like other states. But it any like competitiveness that comes from it is just like starkly the Winnipeg divide versus like I guess even Brandon or like anything else besides. It's just Winnipeg. Winnipeg will be the progressive stronghold, and then everywhere else it's like two different places. More so than like there's like fucking every riding is the most conservative possible. As soon as you step like 2 meters into Winnipeg, and then it's all like either red or yellow or orange.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the map right now on my CanadaGuide.com website, which I'm very proud of because I have this really nice map of all the different elections, and I'm looking at right now. So yeah, Manitoba is mostly conservative, and then 6 liberals, and then 1 NDP. But like when I go back a few years, there was times in which there'd be sort of more equal proportion. Like, during the Harper years, it was more roughly equivalent. There'd be about 3 liberal, 4, NDP, 6 conservative. And same with during like Depression years.
I think the northern one was also NDP for the longest. Am I imagining that?
The northern, like, what do you mean? Like northern? Manitoba?
The northern riding, the single one that covers like almost all of it.
Yeah, because that was Nikki Ashton's riding for a long time, and she was sort of this. Oh, you did?
I didn't like.
I thought she was supposed to be I thought she was supposed to be sort of like one of the great darlings of Canadian progressivism. I don't know that much about her other than she ran for NDP leader when she was pregnant, which I remember being a source of some discussion. But what do you remember about her?
To be fair, I was more conservative when I was younger.
Okay.
But
how old are you now?
Oh, I get called uncle like every fucking day by my. I am the very, very, very ripe old age of 21 years old.
21. So
yes.
You're 21. So you're literally half as old as I am because I'm 42.
Yes.
And you are already sort of reflecting on your younger years, which I always find hilarious. Like I think of like my younger years are when. Pardon me?
I could get younger. I was younger at one point.
I suppose so. I mean, when I think of when I was younger, I think of when I was your age. Whereas when you were younger, it's like 2 years ago or something.
Yeah, when I was younger, like 5 hours ago. Like, oh man, those are the days. Oh, I missed them.
You were so naive back then.
You really. Times have changed.
But anyway, give me your impression of Nikki Ashton. What was she like?
I don't know. I don't really remember too much at all. The most recollection I have from her comes from the most recent election, where she just seemed very. She seemed like she was just trying to make a play for some sort of like leadership, and then she just lost. She just absolutely did not get anywhere in that election. I don't really remember much about her except for the most recent thing where she just came off like as not the best. Most competent person. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, right? Like, I mean, this is kind of in my opinion, the sort of like the dark secret of the NDP, which is that, the NDP is not a very effective party, at least at the national level, right? Like the NDP has lost every single election it has ever contested. It has never come remotely close to winning power. And so there's a degree to which like people in the NDP have to like own that at some level, like that they have to, like that they deserve some responsibility. Like that if you're in the NDP, a party that constantly loses, that might reflect something about the sort of the caliber of people that have historically led the NDP, and for that matter, who are drawn to be part of the federal NDP. Like I just think it's kind of like a curious decision to make in one's life, to be like, I'm going to identify with this party that always loses every election, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I mean, and that's, like, because there's obviously like, the Liberal Party might not be as progressive as the NDP, although I think that even that can be somewhat debatable. But in any case, like, if you are a sort of progressively inclined person, if you are a sort of like more left than not inclined person, you kind of have two forks in the road, right? It's like you can either vote and get involved with the party that constantly wins power and makes decisions that affect public policy in Canada, or you can go the other road and join the party that has never come remotely close to doing that.
Well,
and I just think that people that choose that other path, there's reasons why those people might not be the best at politics, let's just say.
You see, JJ, you fool. I'm actually I'm on my own path. I'm a Sigma male, and so that's why I am a Green Party supporter. You have no idea how. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I think every single person who joins a political party has to do it through like, I believe in this, so I'm doing this. I don't think anyone's like, my chances of winning are like this with this, but
well, I mean, it depends, but it depends what the purpose of politics is, right? Like, if the purpose of politics is gaining power in order to do things, then I do think that there is a certain calculus that should be made by people on the more progressive side when it comes to whether you should support the NDP or the Liberals, right? And I think that obviously that calculus is perhaps different at the provincial level, right? In your province, you have a very strong NDP and a very weak to non-existent Liberal Party at the provincial level. So, in that case, the decision is different, right? But at the federal level, like, yeah, the reason why people join the federal NDP, like, I do not get. And I think it often kind of comes from sort of cultural reasons more so than, sort of rational political analysis.
I've always felt that there's like a little bit of like when you get into progressive spaces, like it's just like at least at the end of the day, I can say I didn't fuck anything up. Jack Eatson can go do his, you can go on a skateboard with some ocean spray or whatever. You can say, I didn't fuck anything up too bad, And so I think
but that's cowardly, right? Like, I agree. And I think like that's a big reason why a certain kind of like really sort of righteous left-wing person supports the NDP, because it absolves them from responsibility, right?
Yeah.
And that's very convenient, right? Like it's lovely to sort of just be able to bitch about both parties, but then never have to actually own up for any policy that actually gets passed or be responsible for it, or have to, when some sort of progressive American asks you for your opinion, you don't have to like defend the cringe Justin Trudeau or Mark Carney or whatever. You can say, well, actually I vote for this other party that's very left-wing, and I didn't want either of these options, right?
Well, actually I voted for the Bloc Québécois. No, the very strong showing in Manitoba here. I'm
sure. Do you have any weird fringe parties in Manitoba?
The Conservatives. No, I'm sorry. I'm kidding. No, you got the CHP, and that's the craziest, I think. Party. Yeah, but they're not really that bad. Like, I mean, had like Maxime Bernier ran here a little bit ago.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. And then and actually, I think there are ridings in like rural Manitoba where, at least in the last couple of elections, the People's Party did relatively well. Never good enough to win, of course, but like strong second place or something like that.
The guy whose name was Derek Sloan, and I had a buddy who saw him one time, and he was like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I was like, "Oh, hi." And it's like, "You're Derek Sloan?" "Oh yeah, I am." And then he like talked a little bit about, I forgot what it was, but he like a little bit of like the Democrat or something like that. And then he walked away. I was like, "Okay, well, that was insane, but whatever." And so I guess that's as weird as it gets, but maybe it's just the case that it's probably just the case that like, you know, the weird ones aren't going to be that popular, because if any province would have a bunch of absolutely cracked out fent addicts, it would be Manitoba.
Uh-huh.
Um,
There must be some though at the provincial level. Do you have any sense that there's any radical?
there's plenty
Or just-
of fighting happening with just Wab Canoe and Abi Khan. They're fucking going head to head.
Abi Khan is the conservative leader.
I think so. Yes, I think so.
Who
They're
was
like-
the previous conservative leader? The woman that was the premier for a brief period of time and then lost to
I
Wab
don't.
Canoe.
I only remember the guy, like the guy that was the premier for a long time before her. I actually don't remember her. She was so
Such a
fucking
blip.
forgettable. Yeah, no one is like,
Yeah.
okay, like what's the big issue you want to push? And do you know about the one thing with like the dump or whatever?
The dumpster with the bodies of the Aboriginal women,
Not
right?
the-
Yeah, and I remember
not
she
the-
put up
not
like
the-
big billboards about that.
Not the dumpster, but like an actual big, like a garbage dump.
The garbage dump. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's like, that's your issue? That's your main, like, what? Like, this is what'll get him. This is what'll get, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
I can't imagine, I think that Manitoba's politics probably follows the rest of the country's politics, where it's like, it's actually not the most crazy. Yeah, I don't have a guy with an Elmo suit being next to like the prime minister for 2 seconds.
Yes.
But I can't imagine. Are there any weirdos JJ, are there any weird fringe political parties from your province specifically? I haven't heard of any of them.
In British Columbia?
Yes.
I mean, there's kind of like the Elizabeth May fiefdom on the islands, on the Saanich Gulf Islands. Like, that's kind of like Elizabeth May is like little private domain, the Green Party. You know, like, because, you know, for off the coast of British Columbia, there are like little islands, right?
Yeah.
The Gulf Islands. And people who live on the islands are often a little nuts. You know, these are kind of like, it's a weird sort of mix of like the off the grid kind of set who can be very right wing and libertarian, or also like very, you know, crunchy granola Wi-Fi hating kind of people.
Unpasteurized milk.
And, you know, yeah. And sort of
Yeah.
Elizabeth May has kind of emerged as their queen, right? And so she seems like she, as my dad said, you know, like, because Elizabeth May is from Nova Scotia. She's actually from Connecticut, but, you know, she kind of grew up as a young woman in Nova Scotia. And, you know, my father has this line where it's like her traveling medicine show basically went from province to province until she settled in like the flakiest part of the flakiest province. And after many tries, like, that's where she was able to get elected to the House of Commons. And, you know, we have like in that same sort of general area, sort of the Gulf Islands and then Saanich, which is sort of on the Big Island, on Vancouver Island.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's also sort of where the provincial Green Party thrives. And there's a couple of Green Party people in the provincial legislature. Next to, I think Prince Edward Island has the most Green Party people. But then after PEI, it's British Columbia, which only, and again, like the most is not very many. I think it's 3 or 2. And then the leader of the Green Party is like barely older than you are. She's like a very young woman in her 20s, I think. And I ran into her. Yeah, provincially.
Okay, yeah. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I saw her the other day at some convention, and yeah, she's just so young, and it's just kind of like very strange to imagine somebody like that. She'll presumably be up on the stage at the next election, because the sort of the media in British Columbia treats the Green Party as like one of the 3 main parties. You know, we have the Conservatives and the NDP. We don't have a Liberal Party anymore. So it's
or a Reform Party. May God rest its soul. No, not a Reform.
Yeah,
No, sorry.
we used to have.
Yeah.
No, you're not wrong. We used to have a Reform Party in British Columbia as well.
I was
The
thinking.
Reform Party of BC.
I was thinking
You're thinking
social
of the
credit.
Social Credit
Yeah,
Party?
I was thinking social credit. Yeah. No, but the Reform was obviously big in the West too. Did you hear the news that Elizabeth May will soon be retiring from politics permanently for the 5th time? Oh,
Yeah.
very soon. She
Yeah,
announced
I'll
that
belie-
today.
I'll believe it. I'll believe it when I see it. You know, she's played this game many times. You know, she said that she's interested in stepping down, and only for the party to like plead, no, please, please, Elizabeth, come back, we need you so much. It's like, the Green Party, the federal Green Party, is just like a complete personality cult from this woman who has been leading it for 20 straight years, pretty much. Like a classic sort of dictatorship.
Yeah.
They sometimes go through the motions of like, oh, I'll step down, and then only the party says, no, we could never survive without you, your divine wisdom, great leader. Please do not,
I
But we'll see. I mean, she is getting old. I think it's the thing is just that because she's clearly built the party so much in her own image and made herself indispensable over her 20-year sort of reign, it is very difficult to imagine somebody else being in charge, which makes me think that even if somebody else is in charge, as we might remember Anna May Paul, who was briefly leader for one election before I believe she was stabbed in the back by Elizabeth May loyalists when she, I suppose started thinking she was a real person and not a puppet. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like that reflected just kind of like the weakness of the non-Elizabeth May bench, right? Like that when you run a party as a personality cult, by definition, it's very difficult for like heirs to emerge, like second in commands, people that are ready sort of to take on the mantle. And, because I think Elizabeth May is a very vain and self-important woman and likes the idea that she's indispensable and likes the idea that the party is a creation of her, and probably on some level is not bothered by the idea of the party falling apart in her absence, because that just reinforces her, significance. So we shall see, I suppose. The question is, I think, whether the media continues to care about the Green Party in the absence of Elizabeth May, if she actually does wander off.
It'll be like the opposite of like every once in a while you have a poll where it's like, oh, they put the People's Party in there. That's so
Yeah.
I have to imagine that like for like there's like a type of young aggressive, like not aggressive but like hard right, I guess I'll say, man who like wakes up to that one clip from The Wolf of Wall Street where Leonardo DiCaprio goes, I'm not fucking leaving, I'm not leaving. And like the exact opposite of that is like Elizabeth May and being like, I guess I'll stay for another 2 fucking decades. Well, why not,
Why not, indeed, right?
Yeah. No, but my guess is that my guess is that she wants the Green Party to like survive and thrive without her because of like a legacy thing. Like even thinking like narcissistically or whatever, I would want the Hudson Party to go on to be the natural governing party of Canada if I was thinking like purely whatever. But I have absolutely no idea what they're in for at all in the slightest.
Well, I mean, she's kind of had 20 years to make the party into something, and the peak is having elected 3 members of parliament. Now they're back down to 1, her own seat. So, it's been you were talking about the Social Credit Party earlier. Like the Social Credit Party was much more successful than the Green Party ever was. The Social Credit Party had like, I think a couple dozen MPs at its peak, and
at one prime minister technically.
Yeah, and very good, Kim Campbell. Yes, that's pretty good. That's some good political trivia nerdery. But like this, the Social Credit Party ran from nothing to becoming a quite substantial presence in the House of Commons for at least a couple of years, and obviously it collapsed afterwards. But Elizabeth May has been struggling for 2 decades for the party to have any relevance at all in the House of Commons, which was her great sort of dream. She wanted to be a sort of kingmaker, balance of power sort of person. Never came remotely close to being that. Mostly just became a party that existed to elevate her own profile and get her on the press and get her grinning face on the election graphics and all of this. And so her legacy is not, I think, an admirable one. It's one that's left really no impact on Canadian politics in any sort of significant way. It's probably, votes split a bit here and there in a way that maybe helped the Conservative, but most of Elizabeth May's political career did not occur. Actually, I'm not sure if I'm correct if I'm saying that. I feel like about half of her political career occurred under a Conservative government, and then half of it occurred under a Liberal government. So I suppose it's probably not fair to give her too much credit one way or another for helping the Conservatives or whatever. But, just irrelevance, right? Like she became a figure of some sort of fame. Like she became a face that we got used to seeing. She became a voice She became somebody who the press felt the need to hear the opinions of and publish the opinions of, as if she mattered as much as the heads of the other parties. But beyond that, beyond like that personal relevance and her personal profile, no, there's not a legacy to speak of. And I think that, frankly, the media should stop giving the Green Party quite so much attention, because like merely just being a party is not good enough. Like you were talking about the Christian Heritage Party, right? Like they're a party, they run candidates in elections. We don't know who their leader is because at some point the press made the correct.
It's Jesus.
Yeah. It is. It's Jesus. But like, at some point, right? My point is like at some point the press made the correct calculus that it's like, okay, you are a party, you claim to be running for prime minister, but you're not really. Your poll numbers are too small to justify it. And I think the Green Party deserves similar treatment.
I think there is a larger chance that we will get a Bloc Québécois prime minister than a Green.
I think you're right.
You speak so negatively about the Green Party. They went to 3 seats. You could also say that they increased their vote count by 200, 300%. Jeez Louise.
Oh yeah.
You could say like that.
From like 1% to 2%. Yeah, that's right.
You seen The Office where it's like, well, I doubled my sales last month. Oh, from what? From 2 to 4? Yep. And it's just, I did. I had someone want me to ask you, what do you think about Mark Carney's tenure in office so far? I know you're a big liberal guy.
I'm not a big liberal guy. For those who were wondering, I mean, I don't like Mark Carney. I think that I was never like a fanatical like Trudeau hater the way that some people were. Like I didn't like Trudeau, but I was like not bothered by him. I think that there were some ways in which, he meant well and was kind of a somewhat innocuous person. I think he was incompetent in a lot of important ways, but he didn't like trigger me in the way that, some people were very triggered by him, by just like his presence and just seeing his face.
They just didn't like that he was prettier than them.
Yes. And I feel like I'm more closer to that when it comes to Carney, honestly. Like there's just aspects of Carney that I just really find very grating and very off-putting. Like a good example is he was, he's giving this press conference in Ireland today. I saw the clips. And, he talks about like how, like Canada is the most European of non-European countries, right? Like Carney's like fixation on wanting Canada to be part of Europe or part of England, and the degree that he just likes Europe so much more than he clearly likes this continent. Like, I just find that like really off-putting. And I find that that's like, that's like self-loathing behavior that I think is very inappropriate for a prime minister to constantly be coveting, a different part of the world and wishing that you live there instead of where you actually are in crummy old Canada and crummy old North America. Like there's a degree to which like Carney's elitism and his Europhilia and Anglophilia, which is it's like it's a logical outgrowth of the fact that he lived and worked in Europe and Britain for several years and seemed to really fall in love with the place and then came back to run Canada as a kind of an afterthought. But no, I don't know. Does that kind of stuff bother you at all? Like the idea, like this, because like the thing too is like Carney, more than any liberal leader that I can remember, going back to at least Chrétien, but I think in many ways even worse than Chrétien, is just Carney's like his desire to like stir the pot of anti-Americanism and use like these anti-American sort of populist cries to sort of rally his political support, like just this constant drumbeat of like, America sucks, we all hate America, we will never be America, Americans are terrible and dumb and bad and everything in America sucks and Canada is great because Canada's not America. And the degree to which like he, as a sort of clever man, like knows that kind of populist slop really gets a certain kind of Canadian excited and delighted to go to the ballot box. And I really think less of him for doing that too.
Yeah, you do gotta admit it is the time for Mark Carney. If ever this was gonna work, it'd be right now. Like not like obviously fucking over America. Oh, America bad. The least popular Canadian take. Congratulations, right? No, everyone thinks this. But like just like the like even nowadays, like what is it? Almost the majority of Canadians would rather be in the would want to be in the EU. It's like, good lord, can you imagine, bro? The king is now is the sovereign of an EU state, and it's Canada. Oh my goodness, beautiful.
I I never thought of that. That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
But no, it is like, I don't know, like it's slopulism, like if you've heard that term before, right? Like the idea, like you just kind of like use, like it's not different than like Trump, in my opinion. Like you just kind of like say these kind of like just really dopey things that are never going to happen. But like there's a certain kind of like boomer middle class Canadian who just loves hearing this shit. Like who
Yeah.
thinks like, oh yeah, like we're just like Sweden and like, oh, we should really join them, and like this kind of stuff. Like it's dopey, right? And
Yeah.
I think that for a smart man like Carney to engage in this kind of politics, I mean, maybe he sincerely believes this. He probably does on some level and fantasizes that he'll be the man to make it happen.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I just think that at a time when Canada has lots of serious problems of our own to address, the idea that Carney would rather kind of shut up criticism of himself and his government and his party's legacy by sort of saying like, look, America bad, you don't want to be America, do you? Then vote for me, I
Mhm.
just find it the worst kind of politics.
That's very fair. The first political video I made was me just being like why I like Mark Carney a lot.
And why did you like him a lot?
I still do too. The reason I like him so much is because it is just, oh god, dude, it's actually just so nice to just have like a Justin Trudeau who like kind of went about spending money in a way that was like moralized, which is weird. And then you've got Pierre Poilievre, who I see as like we need to have no deficit for a while at least. I felt like he was coming on like that. And it's just so nice to have like a guy who's like, why don't we just spend what it takes to run the government, and then like if we're gonna take out debt, we make sure that it's like an investment to the economy. You can argue about like the money isn't really going to that or whatever stuff like that, but it's so, oh my god, Christ Almighty. A big thing for me is like treating economics as a science. It's a social science, but it's a science, and so having something like just like that's objectively mathematically the correct take is really, it's appealing to me as all hell, bro. Oh my god.
But do you think that's what's guiding Carney? Like, do you think he's making economic decisions based on what's in the best interests of Canada, or just what's in the best interests of the kind of special interests that he wants to win the loyalty of for his political project? Like, I don't know. Like you saw, like the other day, he unveiled. This is an issue that's important to me. Like he unveils like $600 million in subsidies for the arts sector,
Mhm.
right? Which is to sort of say, like, for Quebec, right? Because Quebec,
Yeah, that's fair.
and it's just like that kind of stuff. Like, is that good spending? Is that fiscally responsible? $600 million of art subsidies? Like, is that the way that we sort of get spending under control and sort of focus on what matters most to Canada? Like, I don't know. Like, it seems to me that, I don't know. Like, do you really think that like Canada's kind of like core problems are primarily like spending and investment problems? It seems to me that like we've got the spending part a little too out of control,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
that there's a lot of other reforms that we should be treating as priorities rather than just continuing to sort of cut more checks. Like it was the same thing with like his AI strategy. Like he unveils this big AI thing the other day, right? And what does his plan entail? Well, giving big subsidies for made in Canada AI so we don't have to use the evil American AI. Like, is that really a good economic strategy? Like, it just seems like it's another way to just kind of like buy favor with voters by subsidizing industries that Canadians work in so that they associate sort of the success of their, company or whatever with government largesse, which I just think that that's not the best way to run a truly dynamic economy. That's a good way to run an economy that's dependent on government and makes people think good things about the government that's cutting the checks, but I don't think that's a great long-term plan.
I think that my guess is that that's probably not most of the time. Whenever voters are like, whenever the economy whenever they personally feel like the economy is good, voters will be like, this is all me, this is because I'm just awesome.
Yeah.
And then whenever it's bad, it's like, this is that fucking guy who's like, yeah. I don't know if that is the case. I don't know about, I mean, the government could probably spend $600 million on the arts right now, considering where oil prices are at. I think you said that like spending and investment is one of Canada's problems. I think that investment is one of Canada's big problems, but like in the term of the word where it's like foreign direct investment and stuff like that. That's very important. Like that's the thing that we're just not good at right now. but with the like kind of looking at like economics through your like like a national security lens, or it's like Canada, the Canadian AI versus the American AI. I think something like that is kind of important because of how, like I don't know, like I made a video about this and it wasn't like a really thought out video or whatever. I just wanted to rant for like 20 minutes. I made a video once and it was like I'm very annoyed about how much Canada is like contributing to tech and like doesn't get anything for it. We were like we were one of the countries that helped with AI the most. Like University of Toronto had like so many of these like people who contributed to generative AI like so much. I don't know if you know this, but like Elon Musk's XAI was made with like a bunch of people and then one institution, and it was just the University of Toronto. It was like name the University of Toronto. And like BlackBerry reinvented the smartphone kind of. I'm very annoyed with Canada's ability to just like create and invent the coolest shit, and then when it comes like to like the second it takes, like, okay, let's maybe try and we just fall completely on our face and we can't monetize it for shit. We've got none of the cool tech companies, we've got none of this, we've got none of that. And so I think there is like I think we do need to like really start trying to get something for this, because we can't just have like we can't just be like the training ground for all of the smartest soon to be Americans.
But I don't know, like, why can't we? Like, I mean, because if the Canadians sort of best and brightest go to the US, because that's where the big companies are, they build technology there that then benefits Canada as a whole, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's not like their creations stay in the US and never come to Canada. Like, so long as we have good open border free trade with the US, which I'm very much in favor of, we just live in a sort of continental economy, right? Like, we live in an integrated continental economy. There's never going to be a Canadian Silicon Valley that will be as big or important or powerful as the real Silicon Valley, in the same way there'll never be a Canadian Hollywood that's as big as important as the American Hollywood, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, like, Canada, I think, has to focus on where its competitive advantages lie. And I think that some of those are just not in these particularly glamorous industries that the politicians wish we had, and that the politicians are most eager to subsidize because it gives them good, publicity when they can sort of say, look, I'm cutting a check in order to subsidize the creation of a dynamic Canadian tech sector or whatever. Mm. But I don't know, that kind of stuff doesn't bother me as much. I think that if people want to find pride in Canadian success, they should be able to find it regardless of where on this continent Canadians are doing impressive stuff. Mm-hmm. What do you think I've got wrong there?
I don't think you have anything wrong per se. I disagree with you, and I think that a bunch of stuff like that, like, I disagree with you. I'm not saying what you said is correct, but like, I don't think that anything is like incorrect or whatever. Look, if we want to go about the strategy of like, okay, we are the training ground for the immigrants who can't quite get into America yet, so they're here right now.
Yes.
Yes. Then we should get something for it. We put a ton of money into our institutions and like universities and stuff like that. Like, these are hotspots of tech and innovation, and we put so much money to it, and we get none of the reward. We like our GDP.
We do, but we do get the reward, right? Like, we get to enjoy the fruits of their labor. Like, we enjoy the final product.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that's invented, and then it makes its way into the lives of ordinary middle class Canadians. And isn't that good enough? Like, what more do we want? And like, presumably the technology then improves Canadian businesses and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
More efficiency and whatever, right?
Well, yeah, but the cost of doing that, right? Like, these like the institutions and stuff like that, and getting these like very technologically proficient people, like, it does cost money.
It does.
If that's fine, then maybe we could go to the United States and be like, hey, could you guys maybe we keep training all your best people, you got to pay us some money for being your training department or whatever. I'm cool with that.
Well, I mean, they pay the Canadians, right? Like, the Canadians that are doing the work are getting paid, right?
But they're not paying that in taxes because then they're in America now. And I don't know. I see like GDP per capita being stagnant for like 15 years. I see that largely as like an inability to acquire that, like the jobs that have seen the most productivity gain, which is like tech. And I think I think if any country were to be able to, because typically speaking, like if you're going to fund public institutions, you do that with higher taxes, and that comes at the okay. Well, then private companies aren't going to want to do stuff there, right? So you have to try and balance that as much as you can.
Yeah.
And I think if any country were to try and do that and be kind of successful, I think it would be this one. We do have a lot
Canada can. I mean, things have changed now with Trump, but for a long time, Canada had a lower corporate tax rate than the U.S., and this was something that was supported by an all-party consensus. Even the NDP believed in keeping Canada's corporate tax rate lower than the U.S. So, like, it's not just taxes alone, and even like, and I would say that like I'm even a little bit critical of conservatives when they say, you know, it's just regulations and this kind of thing that's sort of keeping Canada less competitive when it comes to this kind of stuff. I think some of it is just like a redundancy thing. Like, Canada is just not the world capital of some of these sort of important industries. And so it's not irrational for people to want to go where the action is, right? Like if you have an ambitious, like Carney himself is an example of this, right? Like Carney's ambition as a banker, as a financial guy, you know, wanting to work for Goldman Sachs and all the rest of it, like those ambitions took him outside of Canada. They took him to London and New York City and Tokyo and all of that, right? Because those are the big financial capitals of the world in a way that Toronto just isn't, right? And I think the same is true for people that work in tech, and the same way it's true for people that work in show business, right? You just kind of have to go to where the action is, and it's never going to be in Canada. If you want to go where the action is when it comes to like oil fracking, then maybe Canada is where the action is.
Yeah.
Or if you want to, you know, go where the action is in terms of, I don't know, what else do we have going for us? Potash mining, you know, then maybe that's Canada's where you go.
Guys named Ryan. Yes, I think that's true. I mean, obviously, like every country has to specialize in something, but like we are only 40 something million people. Why don't we try and specialize in like something that is worth a damn, at least a little bit? Like, there's no reason why we can't try and pull like a South Korea or like a Japan to an extent, but not really, or something like that, where we just like we are like we try and hyper focus on like some like really cool advanced stuff, and if we did that, we would as a country be wealthier.
Yeah, no, I'm in favor of that. It's just that I think that the way you get to that would be doing by a lot of things that sort of people on the left would be very resistant to, right? Like to truly get at that kind of thing, I think you'd really have to like cut taxes in a crazy way. You'd have to reduce regulation in a crazy way. You'd have to sort of like be comfortable with Canada being some sort of like, you know, libertarian economic paradise like Dubai or Ireland or Singapore or something like this, right? Like where you create this like real kind of playground for entrepreneurship. And I think that, you know, people on the left would be resistant to that kind of tax cut, that kind of deregulatory environment. So instead, what happens though is I think like the wrong strategy. And I think the wrong strategy is for Ottawa to like pick winners and losers, you know, for Ottawa, you know, for the prime minister to have like a bunch of companies laid out before him. And he says like, I pick this one, let's give them subsidies. They'll win the future. They'll put Canada on the map. You know, like that, I just think is not a proven strategy for success. It's a proven strategy for a kind of domestic success. Like you can create a kind of monopolistic kind of protected industry in Canada, like we have with our aerospace industry or with, you know, our telecom industry. And, you know, that's good enough, I suppose. And then you close off competition to other countries. But that's not like true global success. Like that's not how you become a world leader in anything. It's how you become a Canadian leader. And, you know, Canadian leadership in a protected domestic industry is often not a terribly impressive thing to see.
Yeah, I think like hard disagree. I think picking winners and losers is dumb. And I think any time that Canada has tried to do that, it's failed. But like, yeah. I think if you just do it hard enough, okay, if you go full bore and you actually like you're comfortable picking a winner or a loser, like you do something like South Korea post World War II or Japan post World War II or China just in general, I do think that you can start to get to the point where like you have like an actual winner, but like it would be very politically like it's not okay to just be like, this is the company, here it is, everyone. This is it. You can't really do
Yeah.
that. And so instead, we'll just kind of like, oh, here's a couple $100 million. You guys want some cash? You get Robux. There you go. But I think like
So you're saying that true communism has never been tried.
no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying like both approaches would work if you really actually genuinely pick the winner or loser, or you really actually genuinely cut taxes. Both of these would work. I think that you can actually pick a winner or loser and have it work, but you need to like actually pick a winner and a loser, and do what like South Korea did with Samsung, or Nintendo did, or Nintendo, the country, my favorite homeland.
Nintendo World,
yeah, yes, exactly.
The land of the rising sun. That's as they call it. Yeah, that's right.
Actually, I think like that has worked. Those are examples. There's not like communism where it's like, well, actually, there was a small district in Yugoslavia, and for about 2 hours, it was a paradise. You have no idea, man. No, like Samsung is, there's a decent chance that the majority of people in my chat, because they're heavily autistic, will be using a Samsung device. So boom, it can.
No, I mean, I'm just teasing you in the sense that, like, basically what I was trying to get at was like, Canada has been in the practice of picking winners and losers, and we have heavily subsidized various companies that the government wants to see succeed. But it seems like what you're kind of positing is that we just haven't been doing it aggressively enough. And that if we spent even more money, if we protected these industries even more aggressively, then maybe they would kind of like really rise to the status of global success in a way that, they haven't so far. Like the reason why, I don't know, like why TELUS or Rogers or something isn't like a world striding colossus is because they haven't received enough government support.
No, I don't think that's the case, but I think like what do you think about like Taiwan? And like,
well, I mean, like some of these countries, I think, like they are starting in a very different situation that I don't think is really comparable to Canada. Like you're starting with these countries that were, and I was just in South Korea a couple of months ago, and you learn about the history, and like, these countries were very poor. They didn't have much going for them. They had these like strong military governments that were able to sort of like dictate the entire sort of direction of the economy. And, they were also competing with they were in a very unique sort of geographic space as well, where they were competing with other poor countries that also had authoritarian military governments that could sort of dictate the economy from scratch. Whereas, Canada's in a very different sort of place. We're a very advanced first world country. Our sort of era of poverty and authoritarian government is long over. And we're instead exist in this. Well, we'll see.
The carny.
But, and instead we sort of exist in this sort of integrated continental economy that is quite different from anything that exists anywhere else in the world, except for perhaps in Europe in the era of the EU. But so I don't know. I just think that like an understanding of Canada really, I think, requires first and foremost understanding its place in the world very literally, like understanding it as a part of North America, as a part of an integrated North American economy, and just kind of using that as your sort of baseline, and not sort of making sort of, I think, flawed analogies to Canada being like this country or that country, which are very different from us, and sort of the economic decisions they were able to make are not necessarily ones that are available to Canada in the 21st century.
I 100% agree with that. I think the story in South Korea is that like the guy in charge, the dictator at that point, right after World War II, got all the rich people and was like, got everyone to like throw shit at them and be like, "You're gonna die, buddy," and like freak the fuck out of them, and then was like, "I'll cut you a deal." Okay, the name of the ticker is, I don't know what the one scene from the Wolf of Wall Street again, but like, if you invest in Samsung, my guy, I guess I'll let you live. And it's like, yeah, obviously, like all the money flowed to that company afterwards. Like, yeah, I'll keep my life, sure. I'll bet in a penny stock, why not? And I don't believe that that's really. You could, obviously, you can do it in Canada, but I said, I don't think that's politically like viable or feasible or whatever. And of course, you have to do it like not like in secret, but like as soon as the Americans, as soon as we as like two countries start like competing with like pushing our tech companies further, they can obviously do it more. And if we just close off, okay, well then we don't really get what we wanted, which is like we want to have some sort of like tech presence or whatever around the world in Canada, because then it'll just be, okay, Canada's got their stuff, America's got their stuff or whatever, Europe's got their stuff or whatever.
I
But
mean, it would be big. It would be a big obstacle to free trade as well, because we know that one of the big obstacles, not just even under Trump, but like in previous governments in the U.S., like there's been a lot of resistance to the idea that Canada is sort of unfairly subsidizing this industry or that industry. Here in British Columbia, you know, we have this perennial crisis with the U.S. over lumber, right? Because the Americans argue that Canada is sort of subsidizing its lumber in various ways, and that runs contrary to the spirit of free trade. And so they put tariffs on lumber exports from British Columbia, blah, 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 blah. So you could imagine sort of the kind of tensions that it could cause if the Canadian government got much more aggressive and actively sort of subsidizing industries that are supposed to be operating in a kind of competitive North American space. You know, the Americans might get pretty cross with us about that, and then who knows what the consequences would be.
You know, how could one forget the fucking milk? Jesus Christ. How that's so much of a big deal is insane, but I get it, yeah.
Yeah, that's again, for the viewers that don't know, like the idea of the Canadian dairy industry being very heavily subsidized by the Canadian state in order to make Canada a sort of, not, but again, like this stuff, like whenever this approach is taken, it doesn't make Canada a world leader. It just makes Canada a domestic leader, right? Like these industries become very powerful in the context of Canada, but they can never become powerful globally because their protection, like the bubble of subsidies and a favorable regulatory climate, kind of makes them soft and kind of makes them not actually nimble and able to compete, because they're part of the way that they grow is by being protected from competition. And so their products just, they charge too much, and they often offer a mediocre product, but, the captive Canadian audience has no choice but to buy them because we're not allowed to export or import, dairy or whatever else, right? So I don't know. I just think that this is, it's just fundamentally not the path to a stronger economy. And just to get back to the original question that the viewer asked, I think this is a big part of why I have problems with Carney, is because in addition to just his general political marketing and his populism, I think that this approach to economic growth is the wrong one. I think that a lot of it comes from, I think, his background as an investment banker, and his idea that sort of what ails the Canadian economy is primarily a problem of investment, and that in his mind as Prime Minister, the government of Canada is the ideal investor to cure what ails us.
Do you think he thinks that the Canadian government is the ideal investor?
I think so. I mean, I'm sure he wouldn't turn down foreign investment. And I think that when he goes to Europe and all that, like he is now, he has this idea that the Europeans are going to invest more in our economy in various ways. But I think he also, like when he ran for Prime Minister, when he ran for Liberal leader to succeed Justin Trudeau, he made a big deal about the idea, as you brought up yourself, like that he believes in the idea of investment, that we should see Ottawa not just as a force for subsidies, but for like investments, like that these are like short-term economic pain to the budget, but will ultimately yield sort of great benefit in the long term. And specifically in a kind of like industrial strategy sort of way, like not just government spending on social programs and so forth, like traditional Liberal leaders have, but actually like investing in the economy, helping prop up industry, picking winners and losers in the private sector. And that government has an important role to play in that. And I think that like fundamentally, that is just a kind of, I guess in some ways, a kind of like left-right divide. Like on some level, you either believe that is a reasonable strategy for helping make Canada, grow its economy, or you believe that this is a bad strategy that will cause more damage than good. And, perhaps, you as a more center-left person and me as a more sort of center-right person, at least on this issue, this is maybe just a disagreement that we have, and more Canadians clearly agree with your take on it, because that's why Carney is so popular.
I guess so. To be fair, I don't think that I don't know if the government should be like picking winners or losers. And I think that like oftentimes when people are like, yeah, but they really just haven't tried it enough yet. That's like obviously like that's an aspirational statement. They should be trying to do this. I don't even know if it's the case that like the Canadian government should be like, all right, guys, TELUS is getting like a $3 trillion check because why not? I don't know if that's the case, and I don't know if I would advise for anything like that right now. what do you think is the way to grow the Canadian economy?
I mean, I definitely think that we need we need to renegotiate the USMCA. I
Yeah.
definitely think that's very important. Um, I'm troubled by polling data that suggests a lot of Canadians think it doesn't really matter, which I think is something else that Carney has to
Is that the case?
own up to. Yeah, like when you poll Canadians on this and you sort of say like, you know, does this matter? You know, like most Canadians say it does matter, but you know, most Canadians will also say, you know, it doesn't matter that much. It shouldn't be that big a deal. I'm sure if Canada didn't get a deal, we could, you know, basically be fine without it and all of that. And I think that that is a kind of anti-Americanism sort of manifest in the form of an irrational policy opinion, right? Like,
Yeah.
no, free trade with the US matters a great deal. I think it should be freer. I think it should be more open. And definitely, I hate Trump because I think Trump has been such an obstacle to this at a
Mhm.
time when we should be deepening our economic ties. You know, Trump has not only, you know, thrown up roadblocks on his end, but he's given a sort of permission structure for the Canadians to be kind of obstinate on this and to, you know, when he talks about 51st state and this kind of thing, like that creates a pretext for politicians like Carney to sort of say like, well, we should be very cautious of not giving away the farm to the Americans because, you know, they
Yeah.
covet us and they just want to conquer us and all this kind of thing. But, you know, I'm also, you know, I'm not opposed to kind of like what I said before, right? Which is like, if Canada really wanted to try to become more than just a natural resource power, if we actually wanted to try to stimulate the growth of, you know, big transnational corporations and put Canada on the map as an entrepreneurial superpower and an innovator, then yeah, like I think that it's probably worth experimenting with some kind of like radical tax reform, radical deregulation of business in some way, and trying to attract more investment, international private sector investment through those means. I think that like there's kind of a discourse on the center right in Canada that you might not be privy to as a good progressive,
Educate
but
me. Educate me.
no, like there is some discourse where it's kind of like, you know, because Pierre Poilievre is doing really badly in the polls and all of this, right? And
That's what
it's
they.
kind of like,
That's
well,
what they
what would
want
it?
you to think.
That's what they want you to believe. But it's sort of like,
Yeah.
what would it take? Like in this kind of context, like what would it take to make people care about conservatives again? For Pierre to have some sort of fighting chance. And I think like the sheer desperation and the degree to which he's so far behind in the polls is making a lot of sort of center right people a little bit more kind of creative and, dare I say, even maybe a little wacky in their ambitions. And I
Yeah.
think one of the things is that Pierre should just run on like a very radical, very dramatic tax cut, like just kind of something. I remember once seeing somebody who said like borderline ridiculous, right? Like just to cut taxes
Yeah.
in such a dramatic way that it would be shocking, and I'm sure it would, you know, cause all sorts of budgetary problems and deepen
Yeah.
the deficit and all the rest of it. But on the other hand, it would be a gamble to just really try to like unlock a kind of entrepreneurial spirit and energy and investment in this country that we haven't seen in quite a long time. Like if
Mhm.
we perceive Canada as being a very sort of stagnant economy, you have to be willing to do something to give it a kind of a jolt. And I think that when, you know, you look, you know, not to be a hypocrite here, but when you look around the world, I do think that in advanced developed economies, uh, I do think that this is something that has some degree of a track record of success.
Mhm.
Is something radical in the ways of tax cuts and in sort of business deregulation. Like just imagine, like because like, you know, like imagine a world in which it was really easy to start a business in Canada and you basically had to pay little to no income tax on that business. Like that would be really attractive. Like, I mean, that would incentivize me to maybe do a few more entrepreneurial things, like
Mhm.
try to create a store to sell products and stuff like that. You know, I think that would be, you know, kind of fun because like if you think like why are more people not going into business, why are they not businessmen, why are they not making and selling things, you know, it seems
We
like a
like to
big
say business
logistical
people.
hassle.
We like to say business people around this. Like.
Touche.
Yeah.
I don't know. What
Yeah.
what's your? I'm curious. What's have you been getting many comments in your lively marketplace of ideas that is your chat?
Uh. Oh. Well, we have about 40% of it is calling you old.
I am old. I mean, I'm
Yes.
42 years old. What do people want from me? Look at how much gray hair I have.
Yeah. I think that Some people just say, "Oh my God, it's JJ McCullough," which is fair. I got one guy who likes China. He says Taiwan #1, so that's crazy. There's not much. You made a mistake trying to expect anything intelligent from my chat. That's certainly for sure. No, but I 100% agree with you. Like, yeah, like if you lower taxes, that absolutely brings in investment. I oftentimes get angry when I am around progressives for too long. Oh no. Sorry. I'm not even, no. I often get annoyed when I'm around progressives for too long, and they just like scoff at the idea of like, what's the word I'm thinking of? Like tax, flight or whatever, capital flight, where it's like if one guy would pay you $20 and the guy would pay you 15, you're probably gonna go with the guy who pays you $20. So obviously, why would that is the case. Obviously, capital flight exists. And if we lower taxes, we would have more businesses. It's not the case that we would bring in more revenue per se, like some Laffer curve argument or whatever.
Yeah.
Like no, like if you lower taxes, this would bring in more investment and bring in more corporations. And I'm constantly getting angry with progressives at not understanding the economic reality from if you have higher taxes, that brings in just less money, less investment, less corporations, and if you have the opposite is the opposite too. It's very boring to have this disagreement, because as soon as you have this like very intricate, like after the, obviously we think that corporations should pay taxes. We think that wealth inequality is, drastic wealth inequality, most people believe this is bad. But as soon as you try and say like, well, I don't know if this is actually the right move, that's as soon as people get the most angry. And it's like, okay, like I agree with you in every way, and I want the same thing you do. I just disagree slightly with how to get there, and that's like the largest, like, are you fucking kidding me, bro? Really? Yeah.
When you were, you said that when you were a younger man, so like when you were 15 or whatever.
Yep.
You were more conservative.
Yeah.
And then now in like the last 3 weeks, you've sort of become more progressive. What sort of led you down that path?
Yeah. Well, now that I'm in my unk era, 21 years old.
What year were you born?
2005. What led me to being a conservative?
Well, I mean, like,
or what led me to?
What would you say? Like, because
you
were sort of characterizing yourself as if you've been on some sort of like ideological journey, and I'm just kind of like curious, what made you sort of think about your politics in that kind of way?
I guess when I was a conservative, I was like really into like personal finance and stuff like that, and so
yeah,
whatever. And then as I slowly started learning more about economics, and because there's two very different things, is personal finance and economics. And I think personal finance is a little bit more like right-wing coded, and economics is a little bit more left-wing coded or whatever. And I just started like, okay, well that makes a little bit more sense, like mathematically, yeah, whatever. Okay, yeah, sure, yeah. And then as soon as you start to like, as soon as you do that, like the dominoes start falling, and you start thinking like, okay, yeah, whatever makes more economic sense, and then I think that just kind of naturally brings you a little bit to the left. And also, I guess maturing. When I was younger, I was probably, when I was, when I was a younger man, I was probably a little bit more of a piece of shit. You always are. You just think like you just give a fuck less about other people and stuff like that. And so now I'm like, okay, we should probably care about people. I guess the government should probably do something to make sure people can live. And then that just kind of brings you to, I guess, roughly where I am at, I think.
I definitely think it's true that, and like this is, I think, a problem with conservatives, is that they do often kind of like try to apply a kind of personal finance frame to the very different realm of like national budgeting and all this kind of stuff, where it's just kind of like, oh, if you can't balance your checkbook, you shouldn't be having any business trying to run a national budget or whatever, right? Like, or in the kitchen table, we all have to live within our means, and so should Ottawa. And this
hockey metaphor.
Yeah. These are just kind of like very sort of like cliche kind of things that, like, even if you think, like, broadly speaking, yeah, balanced budgets are better than big deficits, and it's bad for the country to be in debt, all things considered. Like, this is happening at such a vastly different scale that it's not really, kind of analogous. It's kind of facile. So I think it's fair. Although it's interesting that you sort of think of sort of economics as or sort of economic sophistication in some ways as being kind of like more left coded, which
I
I think is
yeah.
the. I mean, like I think that. I mean, I don't think you're necessarily wrong. I mean, I think that certainly like a lot of these days, it seems like people that are kind of calling for economic sanity sort of seem like they're more like liberals, whereas like the kind of populist right wing, the kind of like MAGA economics just kind of seems like it's all driven by ideology and
Mhm.
sentimentality and yeah, and like politics rather than kind of calm rational assessment of things, because now sort of calm rational assessments are often seen as kind of
Beta.
academic and thus sort of like lefty ivory tower egghead elitist
Yeah.
fancy talk that we don't want
Mhm.
any of that around these parts and all this.
Marginal propensity to consume, bro. You want to fucking come in with your pronouns too, bro? Like, come on, really? What does that even mean? I don't
Yes,
know.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And I mean, and but it's interesting, like just because you as a younger man have sort of come of age in a political climate that's like different than the one that I did, and that's kind
In the
of
1890s.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But no, kind of upsetting in a way, because you realize it's like, oh, like if you're a young guy, like if you've kind of like basically come of age in like the Trump era, basically the populist era, like sort of the post 2015 era, yeah, your frame of reference for what's left coded and right coded and all that is pretty different than it would have been in my day, and I think reflects just kind of like the way that conservative culture has become a lot dumber over the years, and
Yeah.
that the degree that sort of like smart things associated with intelligence and sort of intellectual rigor are now all kind of like left coded.
Yeah. And I do. Can I tell you something? I was
Yo,
when I was a conservative. I think I started liking Trump in the 6th grade.
okay,
So I watched like the election happen in 2016 and stuff like that and all that stuff, and I watched kind of like a little bit of like
you were 11 years old.
yeah, I watched a little bit like I remember I think I was like maybe 13 and I was like listening to a Trump speech and I was like I'm gonna listen to a Bush speech, why not, you know? And it's like oh my
Hmm.
god, this is different. This is not the this is
Yeah.
what is this, you know? Um, and so I yeah, that is insane. What was it like when you were like younger and stuff like that? Like, what was the left versus right paradigm? I'm guessing it's more like country club conservative versus like fucking crazy lefty who probably doesn't like vaccines or something.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely different. Let me try to sort of think about what that. Well, it's like when I was your age. Um, it was like right after 9/11, right? So
Yeah,
it's like 9/11 in 2001 was very formative to me, and I think was formative to a lot of people. A lot of people of my generation, I think, still kind of think in those terms. So like there was this kind of thinking that the right wing, the conservatives, were like really hard on national defense. They cared a lot about keeping the country safe and going to war against the radical Islamists in Afghanistan and then in Iraq and elsewhere in the world, and this idea that we were in this kind of like great civilizational conflict with these radical right wing or far extremist kind of Muslims and all that. And then there was this kind of thinking that the left, by contrast, was kind of wishy washy on these issues. And they were all kind of like, oh, well, in some ways they only hate us because of what we did to them in the foreign policy. And
America
shouldn't we ask
deserved
the,
9/11.
yeah, the sort of the Hassan
Yeah,
Piker
yeah,
takes, right?
yeah.
And, like, that, and then but even then there was like a lot of sort of procedural things like, oh, is this in sync with international law and we should ask the UN for permission before we go to war with things, and like just that kind of stuff. Like these days I can look back at that and I can say like yeah, progressives had a lot of good points. I think not exclusively good points. I think they were still pretty wrong on the like we deserve 9/11 takes, but that was like the far left, and I don't think that was ever really the position of certainly like the mainstream liberals or Democrats.
Mhm.
But like at the time, that was what I perceived kind of like the stakes of politics to be, like very much revolving around how aggressive were we going to be in sort of taking the fight to the enemy in the aftermath of 9/11. So it was like a very sort of like wartime kind of framing of things. And I think frankly that wartime framing allowed people like me who are maybe more socially liberal and have always been more socially liberal to kind of put some of those concerns to the side, because that era, sort of like in the 2000s to the 2010s, like that was always an era in which, you know, social conservatism was relatively strong. Certainly that was an era where I think like that was kind of like peak homophobia in some ways in terms of
Yeah.
politics. Like that was a time when, like, you know, arguing against sort of like the public acceptability of homosexuality was a pretty active debate, and of course with gay marriage and all of this kind of stuff. And like that was kind of stuff that was easy to kind of put aside as long as there was this like more existential crisis in terms of foreign policy that was sort of seen as more important. And I think that since that whole war on terror has really declined in a way that I did not expect would happen, because when you were in the midst of it, you were really kind of like, and I believe this, you were told like this war is like an infinite war that will last forever and will define all politics forever. And there's like nothing else that is more important than this endless fight against the radical Muslims. That in some ways is an unwinnable war, but you know, we'll just fight it forever because they'll be attacking us forever.
Mhm.
And then that just kind of went away one day. And then now our politics has just become a lot more domestic in nature, a lot more focused on a different sort of set of social issues, a
Yeah.
lot more bound up in just like culture type stuff, like what we think of the general kind of character of the culture that we inhabit. And yeah, so I don't know, like when you think of those, I'm almost interested about this, like when I talk to young people, it's like when you think of like 9/11 and the wars and all that, does that feel like really like ancient history? Does that feel like is that like the same as like when we talk about like the Vietnam War or something, that this feels like something that's very archaic and of another time and really not relevant at all to the political world you see today?
Yeah. I I have a slightly like different theory than what most people would think from hearing just this
Yeah.
like dichotomy. I think that most of like I think it's the same, but it's just the opposite. Oh my god, I'm so incredibly smart. No, I think most people my age still have like memories of like maybe Obama coming out and talking about it or something like that, and so they can kind of like appeal
Yeah.
to that or something like that. On like an anniversary that didn't end in a 0 or a 5, someone coming out and treating it like
Yeah.
it's serious, and so like okay, well, if something's up here, then maybe it is still important. Um, but I think that most it's funny hearing you say that like politics is not is mostly domestic nowadays, because like for I mean everyone my age, no, the first things they ask you is not like what's your opinion on the corporate tax rates, or what's your opinion on you know, Quebec. No, it's like, bro, genocide and like two other things that are from half the planet away. I don't know anything like that.
Hmm.
um
That's fair.
I
That's
think
fair. Definitely, yeah. Since
yeah,
October 7th, yeah,
yeah,
Palestine related stuff has become so
yeah.
front of mind, especially for young progressives.
I don't even know if it's it didn't start on October 7th. Okay, history didn't.
Yeah.
I think even before October 7th, I think that like what I was talking about earlier, where it's like the same but opposite, which is easily my most intelligent take ever. I think that like I think that a big part of that is still very important nowadays. It's just the exact opposite, where like no new wars. Like that was a talking point. Like I remember like that was talking about well before um they went a little crazy over there
Yeah.
in Israel. Um, I think that like a lot of my generation is just like looks at that and takes note of it too, and is just so abhorrently like that was worthless and it was dumb and it was stupid and we need to never ever do something like that again.
Mm.
That like it is still a big part of our mind and stuff like that. But it's just like the exact like, no, I can see myself not fighting this. In fact, I don't want to be fighting it, and I you know, all that stuff.
But it's interesting to me just because like your generation would just not really have any memory of it though. Like it's not like something that you would remember growing up seeing on the television every day and stuff. So like people having an aversion to like no more wars and all this kind of stuff, like that makes to me that kind of like reads as if my generation cared a lot about the Vietnam War or something. Like
Mm-hmm.
something that happened mostly before we were conscious at all, and yet still sort of choosing to care a lot about it.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you think that comes from?
I think we saw the check, but we didn't get any of the food. I think we saw the blowback and we saw the reactions to it, but we didn't see any
Yeah.
of the it does bring your country together to see, you know, something like that happen. And then we just didn't see that, but we saw everything after that, which was, you know, oh my God, we don't like this. Yeah.
That's fair. That's interesting. I find this it's an interesting topic, like the idea of sort of what is the calibration point for what people perceive as, you know, the purpose of the right and the purpose of the left. You know, if we were talking to an even older man than myself, somebody who sort of came of political consciousness in sort of the mid to late 20th century, they'd probably be talking about like the Cold War, like communism, right? Like that they identified as a sort of conservative because they saw the right as being more aggressive in the battle against communism, and they saw the left wingers as being kind of wishy-washy. And then if we were talking to a left winger, they might say, oh, well, you know, I associated the right wing with that senile bastard Ronald Reagan who was going to blow up the world with nuclear bombs because he couldn't tell the difference between a John Wayne movie and reality, right? Like, so, you know, this kind of stuff shifts endlessly, and it's kind of interesting to imagine that when we finally leave this hideous Trump era someday, you know, and we have sort of different kind of figureheads after the fifth term.
Yeah.
After his brain in a jar is kind of wheeled off, then, you know, like there'll be some new political figurehead who will have a new political project, and that will play a big role in sort of determining what people perceive the politics of the right to be. And there will presumably be some new, you know, Democrat president at some point who will be, you know, hopefully activist in some way, pursuing his agenda, and that will be a calibration point for what people perceive the politics of the center left to be. So it's kind of, I mean, this is the thing. Like, as I get older, I like getting older because you realize, like, just, I don't know, like how much of the world you get to experience, and like how many twists and turns in this big story of politics you get to witness. And it's kind of, you know, as bleak as the world often seems right now, I do kind of find a small sort of sense of comfort and joy in the idea that, you know, I've seen the political landscape change pretty dramatically several times in my own lifetime, and I know that it's going to change many more times to come. And, you know, I'm envious of you because you're going to live longer than me, so you'll see even more twists and turns.
Well,
So
I don't know. I don't know about that. I hope. I don't want to say that there'll be more, but hopefully I do live longer than you. Jesus Christ, dude. What I was gonna say was, my dad is incredibly old. He is almost double your age. Not really though, but like a little bit off, but almost double your age. And so I remember,
really?
Yeah, he's old. I remember telling him, like, yeah, did you know, like, one of the top Democrats is like a avowed socialist, and he's like, a socialist? You think Democrats are socialists? I was like, no, but one of the she's a socialist. And he was like, no, I don't believe that. Okay. You know, and so when I've thought about, like, when I die, I don't want it to just be black. I don't want to live forever, but I do want to spectate after I'm dead. I want to be able to, you know, do stuff like that. And so I think it's very normal to want to see stuff change and to also compare it with, like, the younger generations and stuff.
I remember once talking with, you know, a high school teacher of mine who was kind of a sort of mentor figure in my life. And, you know, she's getting quite old now. She's in her 80s. And, you know, we've sometimes spoke about, like, mortality and stuff like this. And, you know, she, as a history teacher, kind of said that was actually one thing that did bother her about the thought of death, was just not seeing the end of the story. And I often sort of think about that when I hear about other sort of celebrities or politicians dying. You know, it's kind of like they die at a very sort of arbitrary time. And I sort of think, like, what was happening in the news when they died? And what would have they sort of thought were the kind of dominant trends of the moment? And what would they have expected the future to be like when they died versus what actually happened? And it seems to me that, like, you know, if you follow the news closely, if you care a lot about politics and history, then it's possible to die at a good time, or it's possible to die at a bad time, right? Like, I could imagine, like, if you died, like, say, right after Obama was elected, that would have probably seemed like a very comforting time to die. It's like, yeah, I think everything's going to be all right.
Yeah.
But imagine, like, if you died, like, right after Trump got elected a second time, you'd be like, okay, the world's fucked and I'm out of here. You know, like, that would be, I think, pretty grim. So I hope that at the very least, by the time I die, it's in at a high point where I can sort of, you know, rest my head on the pillow and feel like, you know, I leave a basically good world, you know?
Yeah. one of the I very rarely will like laugh at like a reel or a TikTok or whatever, but there's this one, and it was this guy who was just like, he said like the current date. It's like, imagine being born. It wasn't today, obviously, but like imagine being born on June 13th, 2026. My brother, you missed the whole thing. You missed the entire first. You missed the whole thing. You're coming late right now. I thought that was really funny and a fun way to think about it.
That is really funny.
Yeah.
Are you glad you were born when you were, or do you kind of wish you were born in a previous era? Do you ever think about that?
Oh God, I hate people. It's like, I wish I was born earlier. It's like, shut up a little bit, bro. No, I'm pretty happy with when I was born. I've always thought that like if I were to be born, I'd want it to be like today, bro. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I think that like Gen Z's at the worst moment. I think that we're kind of seeing a lot of the things that we saw from like World War I happen, where like countries are like getting into like little trade disputes or whatever or something like that. Or anyway, I think that the 2030s will be pretty good, but I think that something's got to reset here. I think it's probably going to involve something like a war or something like something. I don't know whether it's like like the U.S. gets like U.S. defaults or just something like that. We need some sort of reset in the system after a while, because everything, you know, especially with economics, it just gets like so entrenched and stuff like that. And it's like, oh damn, I'm gonna be the silent generation. I'm the person who's gonna have to fucking fight and do some shit, and then my kids or whatever, or not even my kids, but like I guess like maybe a niece or a nephew or like someone who's like the one generation after me, Gen Alpha or whatever, they're gonna be the ones who get to reap the rewards of something. And so I guess but even before I thought this, I always thought like I'd be born today, like when I was asked it, because I've been very optimistic throughout my entire life, even if I am a little bit like short term, like I think something's gonna have to happen. What about you? How have you? I wish I was born in 17. Like, what about you, man?
No, I feel like I like being born when I was. I mean, this is kind of a very cliched thing to say, and I feel like every generation kind of imagines the moment in which they were born in this way that I'm going to describe, which is like, I do feel like that I was born at an interesting cusp of technology. You know, like when I was a kid, there was no computers, there was no internet and all of that. And then I kind of got to like witness in a very conscious way the rise of computers and the internet and sort of their kind of gradual takeover of the world and the culture and society. And like, I'm glad I have that frame of reference. Like, I'm glad I didn't have a cell phone, for instance, until I was, you know, basically your age, right? So it's like my understanding of like the role of technology, I think is valuable, is a little bit distant. But you know, I mean, at the same time, like I feel like everybody kind of thinks that. Like I talk to people your age and they'll say things like, oh, I'm glad I was born like right before all the social media like really took over. So like I have a sense of what it was like before, you know, like and you know, like I'm sure if I talked to my dad, he would say the same thing. It's like, oh yeah, I was
before
born when
that
television just
yeah, I was supposed to say color TV. Yeah.
No, it's true. It's like when
Yeah.
my father was born, like TV was still a new thing. And I remember even talking to my grandmother once about this, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I remember like when they first brought in the radio, and like I can remember what a big deal that was, and this kind of thing, right?" So it's like I think it's useful. The thing though that I think when it comes to sort of fantasizing about previous eras is that you always have to remember what it would be like to be old in the eras that come after. So like there's definitely like aspects of sort of like the 60s and the 70s that seem like very vibrant and dynamic and an interesting kind of like milieu that would have been kind of cool to be a young person in. But I don't know, like would I like to be like an old man today? Probably not. Like would I want to be somebody in my 80s in the 2020s, like when everything is full of technology that I can't use and don't really understand, and I don't know, like have grandchildren who are, you know, doing stuff that I can't relate to? Like, no, I don't think so. I don't think I'd want to be old in this era if the trade-off was that I got to be young in that era. So, you know, I think if anything, like I relate to what you're saying, like that the best time to be born is probably the present day in any era.
I've actually never thought about that. Yeah, every time I've been asked that, I've always thought about like what it would be like to be young during that era instead of like old in this era. I've actually never thought about that. That's a good point. I mean, I think it all went downhill
Yeah.
after. I'm glad I was born before Grug invented the fire, and like I got a good sense of like the cold nights and all that stuff. Um, but
That's funny.
afterwards, it's just I was gonna ask because you said like you made a point about how like a lot of people my age nowadays will say something like I'm glad I got to exist before social media and stuff like that, like a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, uh, the government is banning social media now for under 16s, I think. What are your thoughts on
Yeah.
that?
I mean, I think that this is kind of slopulism as well. Like, I think that this is kind of something that you do to kind of like appease anxious middle class parents and get them to vote for you,
Mhm.
rather than because this is in any meaningful way actually going to keep young people off social media. Because like you can't ban kids from using social media. All you can do is ban them from creating accounts, which means that they will just use like the generic version of the site, which I'm not convinced is all that much better. If you believe that social media sort of poisons your brain or malforms you in some sort of way,
Mhm.
like, is the problem having an account? I mean, I guess maybe that's a significant part of it, but you know, kids are still going to use these platforms, even if they have to use a generic account, even if they have to engage in some sort of chicanery to kind of like weasel around the rules. Like, what are they going to
Mhm.
do? Are they going to ask, like, do an interview with you to make sure that you are who you are? Are you going to have to scan your passport every time you log in? Like, I don't know. I think just on some level, it's not really a very sort of serious policy, and I'll be curious to see like when the actual details of enforcement and what the consequences will be if you break the rules and all of this.
Mhm.
But what is your take as somebody who's younger and more
Yeah.
gets to sort of witness the horrors that this technology has supposedly inflicted upon people your age and younger?
I think definitely kids are still going to use this like the generic version of the social media, or either like I'm sure you've seen the instances where like people will go to like Gmod and find a get a photo of like the professor like character who's and like contort his face to go like, and it's like take a photo of you smiling, and it's like you're
Oh,
good to go, you can get in now.
oh
Or
yeah, yeah.
like a different video game character or something like that, or like Thanos or whatever.
Okay.
um but I do think that a big part of it is accounts and stuff like that. Like um I left high school, and then that year they're like, no more phones. Okay.
Yeah. Oh,
And then I remember there's a
what
whole
was
bunch
that
of.
like having phones in the school?
I remember one time there was an account that was dedicated to the school. I am not gonna say the name of it, but it was like blank,
Yeah.
whatever, and it was meant solely to find people who were in the school and contact a bunch of people and be like, do you have any embarrassing videos of them? And I remember
Yeah.
one time a girl got mad at something I said, and then a few like months later, a video of her saying the N word was just posted, and I was like, okay, well, I mean, people in glass homes shouldn't throw stones. First off, okay, so, but then number two, I was like, this is bad. Like you had people, like I remember it was online school at that point, and so
Okay. Oh yeah.
people were like in the chat for live school being like, yo, this account, please, can we have a truce or whatever? And people are genuinely um, terrified. And I think that type of anxiety is very deep within like a bunch of people my age and stuff like that. This is in a lot of ways like the era of anxiety, and so like not having an account and like having to like, what are you gonna do? You have to memorize someone's username, and then like, okay, I want to look up what like Idris Elba is doing or whatever, or some like young like famous person. I
Yeah.
think that is like so different from like the personalized like I DM'd this person, they DM'd this person, and then like they know this person, they
Yeah.
have a video of this person like sucking dick in the gymnasium, and so now we're posting that everywhere. It's
Mm,
like Jesus Christ.
mm,
Um,
mm.
I think a lot of like the benefit of like yeah you can only look up with a social media when you don't have an account instead of like looking down, which is a big difference in how that will impact kids, I think.
That's a good response. That's a good perspective. I mean, yeah, as a younger person, you clearly sort of think about this in ways that I never could because I don't have that same insight. driven from the experience. So I don't know. Maybe you make a good point. Then maybe I have to think about this. I mean, I guess there's a part of me that just is always a little bit skeptical of the degree that government can truly ban things. And I guess like there's a degree to which this strikes me as just like I said, like a kind of basically sort of populist thing where like the politicians just want people to pick up their newspapers and read government has banned bad thing, and then they're like, oh, great job
Yeah.
government, yeah, they do that face.
Yeah. The old boomer
And
pog
like
face.
yes, and sort of like the follow through is it doesn't really matter that much, and no politician's really going to be judged on how effective the policy is or isn't, and all of that. But I mean, yeah, I mean, yeah. From what I understand, like the jury is still a little bit out in terms of how damaging social media is in terms of sort of like the mental health of young people and so forth. But it's definitely perceived to be a problem, and as you are describing, like there certainly is a lot of anecdotal evidence to suggest that, yeah, a lot of young people do use the technology in very irresponsible and damaging ways in the direction of bullying and harassing and making life harder than it should be for
Mhm.
for other young people. So I don't know. I guess we'll have to see. Like we'll see what the legislation is like. From what I understand, no actual bill has yet been tabled. This is just
Yep.
something that the government says it intends to do. And in that sense, it's following a popular trend that some other Western countries have been embarking upon as well. So
No, I think there's definitely. I think all of that is correct in the sense that, like, yeah, there's a whole bunch of like play here, a whole bunch of cool virtue signal points that you can get from old people and stuff like that.
yeah,
And who are you really impacting? A bunch of 12-year-olds aren't going to like you. They're going to forget about the thing when they're time to vote anyway, so it doesn't even matter, bro.
yeah,
I think all that's the case, and also I think that like something can be like incredibly like, oh, pog inducing for old cringe boomers, and also be like, yeah, maybe it's worth a shot to see what happens and stuff like that. I think even social media being banned for young people is like, that's like understandable, but like we don't really know how that's gonna play out. But like phones in schools, I think you would agree that like even that, like, that's a different thing from like no social media for young people. It's probably very
yeah.
much okay.
Yeah. I mean, it like really boggles my mind to imagine how school could work with phones. Like that's when I really feel like the oldest, because like when I was in high school, like cell phones didn't really exist at all. Like nobody had them, and certainly nobody had smartphones. That wasn't even possible. So like just the idea that there could be like this distraction machine in your hand at all times, that you could be like texting your friends, and like I don't know, it's just like I can't imagine how it would work. And it seems, and because a phone is a physical thing, like a phone ban in a school seems very clearly could work. Like, the teachers gather up the phones, or I don't know how this works in practice, but it's like it's just an objective binary. It's like you either have the phone in your hand or you don't. You either have it on your person or you don't. Like it's
Mhm.
something that's clear. Whereas opposed to like banning social media, what that looks like, the idea that you could create a young person whose life is just kind of absent of social media, that seems like a much kind of taller order. Uh, yeah, and a much more ambitious one. And when the more ambitious a goal gets, the more likely it is to fail. I mean,
Mhm.
we ban pornography for young people, but it's not like young people have never seen a naked person until they reach age 18, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. um. No, that's the case. I grew up in the way where like you could kind of see the arms race hit its like peak momentum. I remember one year it was like, all right, I was able to, hey, yo, Mrs. Teacher, I gotta go use the washroom. And at that
Uh-huh.
point, all of our phones were in our pockets. It was like, okay, in the washroom, in a stall, Khan Academy. What the fuck am I missing about this test? Please tell me. Go
Oh,
back,
really?
learn
Oh,
it,
God.
go back in there, like, yeah, I gotta teach, don't worry. And then eventually,
Can't imagine.
yeah, yeah. And then eventually they wised up to that, and they're like, "All right, you guys can go piss, but you got to put your phone in a little like wooden pocket thing that's like jail time now." And it's funny that like that is gone. Like even that like little thing is like, bro, why would we even do that? The phones can't even come here anymore. It's like that, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Where like yeah, it's just it's crazy that like even the things that like the solutions to the problems I saw are like that's worthless nowadays. Like it's not even allowed here.
Yeah, it's a different world. But yeah, we are sort of like in the era. It does feel like we're in some sort of pushback era. How that pushback will manifest, if that pushback has the capacity to actually change habits in any profound way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I was a kid, like the big issue was that people were watching too much TV. And like that was something that came up all the time. It's like the kids just sit in front of the TV for hours and hours and on end, and all they do is watch this dreck. And can anybody pry the kids away from the television? And then like there was also sort of a similar kind of like social panic about video games, and that kids spend too much time playing video games and they make you violent and
Killing
all
machines.
this kind of thing. And
Trained killing machines.
murder stimulators, or simulators they were called as well.
Murder stimulators.
Not stimulators, but yeah. But then it kind of feels like and those like certainly like the TV concern has really fallen down. Like nobody really complains about that anymore in any capacity. Like nobody says kids spend too much time watching things, right? Like that's just kind of faded. And then like the video game thing is like maybe present to some degree, but it just kind of seems like the way that these kind of moral panics end is that people like on some level just kind of stop caring. But then also there's just like some new thing that arises that maybe kind of distracts our attention from. And so maybe like that will be the way that this ultimately gets resolved, is that like maybe there's just, I don't know, like the brain chip is introduced in a few years.
Say that, yeah.
And then suddenly the moral panic's all about, are the kids using their brain chip too much? And then like social media feels, and the phones and all that feels like a much more quaint kind of concern.
And then like some like new age teacher's gonna come in and be like, guys, stop trying to ban brain implants, okay? We gotta start using this smartly. We gotta start smartly using brain implants. Come on, guys. You can use your brain implants in class. Just like, come on, you know. Maybe take an earbud out or whatever.
Yeah, you gotta meet the kids where they are.
Yeah,
you know, they can integrate the brain chip into a productive and kind of lesson. Yeah.
Roblox history class. Yes. No, that's Wait. Oh, well, sorry. I thought I was gonna say something. No, I was gonna say something and then I forgot what it was. Yeah. What was the I know you talked about like TV and stuff like that and video games. How much of you were born in the 80s?
I was born in 1984. Yep.
How much do you remember the Cold War per se, or like talk about that at all?
I would have been pretty young. I remember, like, I have sort of like vague memories of the Cold War ending in 1991 when I was like very little. I guess I would have been like 6 years old.
No.
7 years old.
Okay. Yeah. Thank God you split that up a little bit. Thank you.
What?
No. I mean, just
my bad math skills were triggering you.
No. Thank you for not saying the years. I could have been 6 or
no. So I would have been like 7 years old in 1991, and like I do remember. I remember like some tropes of it. Like I remember like the idea of like the Berlin Wall falling being a big deal. I remember the idea of the Soviet Union falling. I remember like this is a thing that was, I guess, relevant to me as an elementary school student, was the idea that like the maps were always wrong, right? Like that you would have like a map in the school, or you'd have like a atlas, and the atlas would still say Soviet Union, and you would like know that, oh, there is no Soviet Union anymore. Ha ha ha! Look at this dopey out of date map, and like the maps in the classrooms and stuff. And there was this kind of idea that like the borders were always changing, in part because there was a lot of turmoil in the former Yugoslavia, and that the former Yugoslavia was always breaking into smaller and smaller countries, and then the maps had to be constantly updated to deal with that. And then when I was in high school, there was a big war in the former Yugoslavia, which was kind of the aftermath of the Cold War, and that was kind of a big deal. But no, like, because I was so young at that time. Like I didn't really have any great conception of the relevance of like the Cold War or communism or the USSR as this kind of like existential enemy. In fact, when I was young, like the Russians were our friends. Like Putin was like a good guy, and like he was a guy we could do business
We got to
with.
meet him
And
where he's at.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's like, and
Get him
he
in the
was
G7.
kind of
Why not?
exactly right. So like he was a kind of like people viewed him warily, but there was a kind of sense that we don't want to be too mean to the Russians. We don't want to have a kind of like adversarial relationship. And I feel like it was only truly actually when Trump ran the first time and there was all this stuff about him being a Russian asset and all that. That was really like the first time where it kind of felt like things really sort of sharply went back to the Cold War kind of mentality in a way that felt like unfamiliar to me. Like I could never in my life remember a time where like we were now comfortable just sort of framing Putin is objectively a bad guy, he's a villain, the Russians are bad and we should be sort of skeptical of them. And then that has been very much the dominant frame for the last decade or so. And it's not just because of Trump. Like I think that things were already kind of drifting in that direction, like because like when I was a kid, Russia was a democracy. It was like an imperfect democracy, and the guy who was briefly president of Russia before Putin, Vladimir or Boris
Boris.
Yeltsin, who was this unstable alcoholic, but he was like, you know, he presided over a democracy of some sort, and there was a kind of a sense that like Russia was a free society and all of this. But then when Putin came to power, and I do remember Putin coming to power because that happened on New Year's Day 2000. And I remember, I have a very vivid memory of this. I remember being at a buffet, like a New Year's Day buffet with my parents, and we arrived at the restaurant, and I remember like in the waiting area picking up like an issue of the Vancouver Province, and it had like, oh, world celebrates new millennium. And then like in smaller letters, it was like Russian President Yeltsin resigns, like obscure figure named Vladimir Putin, new president. And I was like, I wonder what's going to go on with this fellow.
Yeah.
And yeah, but then like, over the years, slowly, but I think by sort of the late 2000s, it was pretty clear that Putin was establishing a dictatorship. Every year there would be like one thing, like he would ban this election or ban that newspaper, and then these kind of things add up. Not unlike the beloved Star Wars films, where Senator Palpatine kind of gradually turns into this wicked emperor, and it happens so slowly that they don't even notice, right?
Mhm.
That's kind of like how the Putin sort of thing was, because like in the early days, there was elections, and he got voted in after Yeltsin stepped down, and like there was you kind of got the sense that things were bad, but it took a while for the full sort of flower of dictatorship to unfold.
Mhm.
But
I
yeah, you'd have to talk to someone. Sorry.
I thought I had to tell you. I wasn't because I was worried. I'm not trying to make fun of your math skills. I was worried about you saying 6'7".
Oh,
I that came off like I didn't want that to come off mean. I wanted to ask you a question because you brought up something, and I was like, oh, this is a good question for him.
yeah.
What do you think about the words Y2K aesthetic?
I'm not a big fan of. I'm not a big fan of like slapping aesthetic labels on everything. I feel like this is a very unique sort of cultural dysfunction of your generation,
Yeah.
which is I talked about this in a video I made where it's like the Pokemonification of everything. Like your generation really seems to be very fixated on the idea that if something doesn't have like a cute little name you can put on it, it's kind of worthless.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, that's kind of like my instinctive sense when I hear about Y2K aesthetic. But
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like the aesthetic itself, like I don't know, it's kind of like a 20-year-old's idea of what they think life looked like 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's kind of malformed. But like that's how everything is, right? Like when you look at like, well, what is like retro 70s fashion like? When you look that up on Pinterest, you get like a very distorted kind of caricature version of it. But like there's elements of truth to it. And when I see like memes about Y2K aesthetics with everything's like silver and kind of like weird shaped, you know, CD players that are maybe kind of bulky and odd, and computers that are different colors and have big chunky keyboards and stuff, like yeah, I remember that stuff. That stuff definitely existed. I certainly didn't feel like I was living in a world of a very unique aesthetic at the time, because that was just sort of like the background atmosphere of life. But you know, it's useful to be reminded that every era has its own kind of vibe, and even if you don't notice it at the time, when enough time has passed and technology and culture and aesthetics march on, you can look back and sort of say, oh, that was actually pretty weird.
Hmm. It's even I'll say like I there's a bunch of like at my university there was a thing where it's like Y2K dance night and everyone like dressed up and stuff like that and having to look at
Yeah.
everyone's like all right well all right it gets hard to decipher like Fruitiger Arrow and like older brother core and like Y2K and it's like
Yeah, yeah.
okay yeah no yeah that's fair.
Do you like the aesthetics in general? Like, do you sort of think that sort of like 90s, early 2000s aesthetics seem kind of cool to you?
A big part of uh the stuff that I've done for my channel has been like kind of that aesthetic. The stream I set up for this, I looked at the two squares of our face cams, and on my stream, mine is a little bit less wide, and so I was like, that kind of looks like a DS, and so I built something that looks like a little bit like of a DS UI or whatever.
Oh yeah, looking at it right now, that is kind
Yeah.
of cool.
And like even though you see the little corner parts or whatever, I took that from the DSUI and I put it in Photoshop and I made it blue and red and yellow, whatever.
Oh,
Um,
very nice.
so I personally like it, but like as much as like everyone likes something from when they were younger, I love my DS. I like my PlayStation 2. I like my Xbox 360 stuff like that. Like as much as everyone is fond of things from their childhood, I also like these things. And oh yeah, I remember going to a friend's house and seeing a like a see-through whatever, like a GameCube, like oh that's cute too and stuff like that. And so
Yeah, the kids, your generation really loves the DS. I have seen definitely a lot of like nostalgic
yeah.
DS based sort of things. This kind of stuff is weird to me though. Like I must say, like it inhabits a kind of like weird space in my mind
Mm,
because like stuff like the DS and the GameCube and the Fruitiger Arrow and all that kind of stuff, right? Like that was when I was already an adult. Like that was like when I was your age, basically, or sort of in my early to mid 20s. So like it doesn't feel like nostalgic to me because like that kind of just feels like that's just how like my adult life was, and I'm an adult now, so like I can't be nostalgic for my 20s because I was already a grown up, right? If that makes sense. Whereas like when I think of stuff when I that I am nostalgic for, like stuff from like the early 90s and like late 80s, like that stuff kind of feels very magical and forgotten and like of another time, if you know what I mean, right?
mm-hmm,
So it's yeah, it's kind of funny like when that instinct kind of like kicks in. Like when you kind of like lose your ability to sentimentalize something because it becomes too familiar. And yeah, when I think see stuff like DS stuff, it kind of feels too familiar to me. It feels too recent to be kind of sentimental about. And that's why it's kind of fun to sort of see like young people like you that can perceive this stuff in such a radically different way because of course your life is so much shorter and so you sentimentalize different kinds of stuff. But you know, like one
mm-hmm.
day, you know, they'll you'll be on a stream with some young kid who's half your age and he'll have the chat done up to look like, you know, 2026 era YouTube, and you'll be like, "Oh, this is nothing
Yeah,
special. This is
yeah,
but to him it'll be the most important thing in the world."
yeah. I do think that like the flat icons or whatever, the rounded edges, all that stuff. I do think that like people are getting nostalgic earlier, um, and are also like the date at which like that ends is like being pushed back a little bit. Maybe because young people are like how Gen Z is just like fucking hates getting old and they're terrified about that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I can't really I don't know why that is the case honestly. But like I think that even if I in 20 years if I did see like rounded YouTube, I would still have like some sort of fun. So like, oh, when everything looked like shit, dude, that was beautiful. I miss that days. Oh, that was before Don Jr. was president and before what's the Justin Trudeau's R&B singer kid or whatever.
Oh yeah,
That
yeah.
was
The
before
model
Drake
kid,
was
yeah.
prime minister.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Have you seen those the thirst trap pictures of the young Trudeau?
I have not, unfortunately. I wish I had, bro. How have I not? But no, I have not.
No, the young, I think Xavier Trudeau is his name.
Yes,
Yeah, he's been
yes.
it's really gone viral. You know, that he's his modeling career or something, and there's like these pictures of him like I think he's like provocatively like on a lollipop or lifting his shirt and showing his abs and stuff like this.
Jesus
And
Christ. That's okay,
this
yeah.
is the yeah.
That's just the oh my god. I can't like
Well,
yeah, let's get a sexy can we just get a sexy photo of you like doing the most childish shit possible, please? Can we put that on a fucking magazine? Oh my
this is
god.
but dad can't pay attention because dad's too
Yeah.
busy dating Katy Perry. So
You know what I did see? I I saw a video of Katy Perry talking to like a rapper with a tank top that was tight on, and the rapper was like looking at her chest, and I saw a whole bunch of things like Justin Trudeau was gonna send a CSIS or whatever on this fucking guy.
That's pretty funny.
So I haven't seen Xavier do any, little tykes modeling gigs, but I have I have seen that.
That's pretty funny.
Would
That really blows my mind. Just that Trudeau and Katy Perry are together. It just seems like, I don't know.
honestly, for me, it seems like the most. I'm surprised it didn't happen earlier. It seems like the most. Yeah. Honestly, yeah. Date a pop star. If any of our prime ministers were to do it, it'd be him. If any of them would go to Coachella after, fucking A, it'd be him.
It's just so like so open. I think like that's what kind
Yeah.
of like weirds me out a bit. Like I thought that like if this happened, it would be like this very like secret kind of hush hush like rumor gossip. Like maybe once in a while we'd get like a paparazzi photo of them like leaving a restaurant together, wearing sunglasses and scurrying off. But instead, it's just like, oh, it's all over social media. It's all over their own social media. They yeah, they go to these.
He's like trying to soft
music
launch
festivals
with like a
together.
photo with a Japanese minister or something like that. Or
Oh, it's pretty nuts.
I wanted to ask you from BC. You're from BC?
I am. I was born in Vancouver. It's all I know.
Okay. Do you know of the? I have a friend who like talks about their dad in BC and stuff like that. Do you if I ask you this, maybe you'll know what it means. Maybe you'll just instinctually get it. Do you know what Petros Canada stands for?
Petro Canada. I mean, it's not just petroleum Canada.
No, there's
I feel like actually you bring this up because I feel like I've heard this before now that you mention it.
yeah, there's a thing where it's like Petro Canada stands for Pierre Elliott Trudeau rips off Canada.
Okay.
You haven't heard of that?
I haven't heard of that, but that's funny.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I thought that there actually was something to this.
No.
But no.
There's nothing actually to this at all in the slightest. It's just
Okay,
Pierre
okay,
Elliott
good.
Trudeau rips off Canada.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's
Yeah.
see, like that's to bring it back to the very beginning of our live stream. We've been streaming for a while now, eh?
Oh my God! Whole mega Canadian sentence right there. We've been streaming for a while, eh?
Yeah, but like when you were talking about the like the Brian Mulrooney eraser, right? Like and the GST and all that, and the degree to which like people were making like merchandise about Mulrooney to make fun of him for the GST. The same was true with like the National Energy program and Pierre Elliott Trudeau. Like the degree to which like that launched a million jokes and sort of like cutesy sayings like that, and then like bumper stickers and memes and cartoons and toys and all this kind of thing. That's
I remember I was
nostalgic for that.
I remember I was looking up a bunch of like old Canadian political ads because I wanted to design something and I needed inspiration. And I came across a shirt that said like Pierre Elliott Trudeau rips off Canada, and I felt so warm in my heart that like no, every like 30 years we just go through a cycle where we just need to shit on the Trudeau for some reason, and it's just so beautiful of a thing, you know.
Well, I mean, and it's the same. Like I've been looking through the old archives of Maclean's magazine, if you know that sort of weekly Canadian news and politics magazine. I bought a subscription to the archives, and like going through the archives, it's funny like just how many of these debates just recycle endlessly.
Yeah.
Because it's true. Because like with Pierre Elliott Trudeau, it was like, oh, Trudeau hates oil. Trudeau is pissing off the Albertans. Oh, will Alberta separate? These right wingers in Alberta, they're capable of anything. And, it's like, it's just the same stuff. And then meanwhile, it's like, oh, the Quebecers, they seem pissed off. Will they elect a separatist government? What could happen if that happens? Like it's just, it's uniquely uncanny though, because the Sun came, like Justin Trudeau came so long after Pierre Elliott Trudeau, like a whole generation after. So it has this like very weird, uncanny kind of echo effect, where like just the names being the same and the issues being the same. Because George W. Bush was obviously the son of the old man Bush, but there was only like 8 years between
Yeah,
them because
one
Bill
president.
Clinton, right?
Yeah.
One president, right? So it's like and like they were like, yeah, they were too close together for there to be any obvious echoes.
Hmm.
George W. Bush had the same people in his administration in many cases that his father had. So, but yeah, with Justin and Pierre, like it is kind of like a strange, kind of uncanny thing, which makes me think that uh, I guess how many years would it be? I don't know, like 20 years from now,
Hmm.
Xavier Trudeau will get in and we'll just do it all a third time.
I can't wait for him to cripple the economy again, bro. It's gonna be so beautiful.
Yeah,
And like, it's just like when
yeah.
I was a kid. I do you think that what do you think of like moments in time when like Canada and America have both voted for their left candidates, or like America and Canada have both voted for their right candidates, and like the difference of
Yeah,
like,
I
oh, there's
mean,
a difference. So this one's conservative now, this one's liberal now, or like the opposite, or
yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question because this is something I've thought about a fair bit because,
mm-hmm,
I think a lot about U.S.-Canada relations. I think a lot about the ways that Canadians form their sense of identity in response to the U.S. and anti-Americanism and all that in Canadian politics, and the degree that which Canadian identity is often shaped a lot by sort of political outcomes.
mm-hmm,
So I think that the Canadian identity is kind of based on an assumption in large part. The modern Canadian identity is based on an assumption that the American government will always be more right wing than the Canadian government. And, I think that's been the case more often than not. Like, I think the default state has often been for there to be a Republican in charge in the US and for there to be a liberal in charge in Canada. And then sort of the interplay between those two people is kind of similar to how it is now. I mean,
mm-hmm,
it's more extreme now because Trump is more openly awful and more belligerent and sort of personifies the most repulsive qualities of sort of conservative politics. But like it was a similar kind of dynamic when Pierre Elliott Trudeau was in charge, and then Ronald Reagan, and before him Richard Nixon were in charge. That was kind of a similar kind of thing. And then when you get the same party in charge at the same time, like when you had Brian Mulroney was in charge while Ronald Reagan and the old man Bush were in charge, there's a kind of a sort of sense like, well, this is just the way the world is going. Like the world is just in a conservative mood right now. And
mm-hmm.
like that was because then at the same time, like, Margaret Thatcher was in charge in England. So there was a kind of sense that it's like, well, the world is just very conservative. And so it follows that all countries will have conservative governments. And, but when it go and then the same with true in like the what we would now call like the neoliberal 90s, right? So Bill Clinton was in charge in the US and then Kretchen was in charge in this country.
I goat.
And so there's just kind of a thinking, well, like the world is just in a kind of progressive or liberal mood, right? And again, like in England is always the important sort of like third country, because if you get England as well, then it's kind of like, okay, that's the big trifecta,
Yeah.
right? So in England they had Tony Blair, who was a kind of like neoliberal, kind of like moderate liberal, kind of progressive type of character as well. So then it's just kind of like, well, that's just how the world is in. It's in that kind of mood. But the weirder sort of situation is when you have like a progressive in charge in America and a
Yeah.
Canadian conservative in charge, which
Harper
was
and
like,
Obama.
Harper and Obama. And that was kind of odd. And I think that was kind of a challenging time for the Canadian identity in some ways. And I wrote about this because like a lot of Canadians, just liked Obama more. Like Harper was always quite unpopular and Obama was always very popular with Canadians. And, and I think Obama was just a more kind of like attractive political figure than Harper ever was. And I think that the degree, and I remember this because I was more active in sort of conservative stuff in those days.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like conservatives would try to make Obama a kind of anti-American villain. Like they would try to be like, isn't it great that we have this responsible conservative government in Canada while the Americans have this crazy leftist who's, screwing everything up down there. But, that argument never really stuck, I
Yeah.
think, for a number of reasons. And I think like in some ways, like the Canadian narrative was saved because in Obama's, ultimately the Republicans took charge of Congress as they always do. And they held up a lot of what Obama wanted to do. And then so the Canadians could be sort of righteous about how like, oh, those dumb Americans. They can't even realize they have a good president. They've sort of
Yeah.
elected this horrible Congress that's preventing him from doing all the good things he should be allowed to do. And then that sort of feeds into this idea that's like, oh, well, in the Canadian system, such a thing would never happen because, in Canada, there is no independently elected Congress. The prime minister gets to just ram whatever he wants through. And isn't that great? No checks and balances
So
and all
much
that. And I
more of a
remember
responsible nation.
yeah, yeah. So I remember that being a whole kind of
Mhm.
discourse. But and of course now we're back to the traditional kind of thing of
Yeah.
right wing, left wing, U.S. Canada. But we'll see. Like, I mean, imagine what if like the weirdest outcome I think would have been if Kamala Harris had been elected president and then Pierre Poilievre had been
Oh my
elected prime
God,
minister.
that's such a good
That would have
point.
been a really weird dynamic.
Oh goodness gracious! Can you imagine? Like that would have been the most reasonable thing to think like a year ago, or not like a year ago, but like a year
Yeah,
and change ago.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely not a year ago, obviously, but like that's insane. I never really
yeah.
thought about that like possibility.
Yeah, it would have been strange, and I mean, like, and I think it probably would have been similar to like the Obama Harper dynamic. I think that Kamala Harris would have been pretty popular in Canada. I think that the Republicans would have taken charge of Congress at some point, and then and that would have been sort of like taken a bit of the shine off of her and
mhm.
made the Canadians kind of like sympathize with her, but then ultimately feel like Canada's still better. And Harper was also kind of moderated by the fact that he had a minority government for his first two terms. So, like, that kind of made him not seen as being as right wing. And you
Mhm.
also like, here's a take that I really hate, and I think is very stupid, but a certain type of Canadian will say this in order to sort of like protect their fragile sort of sense of self. They'll be like, well, in some ways, even a Canadian conservative is still like way to the left of, a Democrat in the US or something like that, right? Like this kind of idea where it's like, oh, even like a conservative in Canada isn't really a conservative. So like it shouldn't really count. America's still more right wing. And like you'd have people that say like Obama's really like more right wing than Harper in some ways. And like I remember actually said
Oh
this to Harper himself
goodness.
once, and he thought that that was kind of a very stupid take.
Um, I bet it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say like I was gonna make a joke about that type of sentence because someone just said Harper was more right wing than Obama though, and I thought it'd be funny because like oftentimes you see like progressives nowadays like people like very very hard progressives will like people like Alex Jones and like Tucker Carlson because they're like kind of anti-establishment or whatever, and so you could see something like that happening. Um,
Mm.
I'm a liberal and I'm very comfortable admitting that like we are the more nationalist party in this country. We're the more like dogmatically rah rah party, I guess. So it's
Yes.
very interesting seeing like that like completely flip on its head for once and have like, oh, if only we could have Obama, we have the dirty Harper.
Yes.
um
Yes.
I You mentioned this is a complete change of subject, and this was
Okay.
probably I'm taking up way too much of your time. um but I oftentimes spend a lot of time in progressive spaces because I am
Mm.
I guess I think that wealth inequality is bad, and so that can bring me to that kind of space. Um, what do you, and they hate this guy, what do you think of Francis Fukuyama? I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Francis Francis Fukuyama. Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
think he's basically a good guy. I mean, like I've
Mhm.
enjoyed hearing his commentary. I've enjoyed hearing interviews with him. I think he's pretty insightful and well informed. I mean, I think that he's become a bit of a meme. Like, I think he's become a bit of a symbol. I think he is judged for things he never really sort of said in terms of the end of history and all that. And
Mhm.
he's explained what he said many times. I think he even regrets that book on some level, or at least regrets the title it was given, because he has to spend so much time in his sort of subsequent career just clarifying and explaining what he really meant and what he didn't actually say.
Yep.
But I think that what he did actually say was perfectly defensible, and I think it still
I
kind of
agree.
holds up, which
Mhm.
is the idea that, like, liberal democracy seems like the best version of human civilization that we've yet been able to come up with. It seems like the ones that people are still striving to get to, and even though it has its critics, it still seems to be what we get back to when we've had a taste of the alternative, like when we look at sort of say like Hungary, right, which tried having an illiberal democracy that didn't wind up fundamentally changing the paradigm in Hungary. It just wound up being rejected, and they went back to liberal democracy, and now they have a government that's trying to undo all of the illiberal aspects that the previous government brought in.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that broad thesis, like, I mean, he never was making the argument that there'll never be any conflict of any sort again after the 90s, or that there'll never be any challenge to the liberal order after the 90s. That wasn't what he meant by the end of history. He just kind of meant it was the end of a certain kind of contest of competing models of civilization, like that there is a lot of consensus over what the winning model looks like. And I think like even now, even at a time when, this age of populism and dictators and all of this, like, I think that conclusion, like that we still basically know what we should be striving for is kind of like the highest kind of pinnacle of human civilization. Like, I think that stands up.
Mm-hmm. I feel I agree largely with him. I honest to God, dude, hopefully you can relate to this, but like anytime, maybe not even politics, like it's not even inherently related to politics, but I hate when someone will watch a video of mine and then like try and use the title or thumbnail as like anything related to the core argument I'm making. It's like, this is trying to get you in, and then the actual substance of what I'm saying, please only look at that. The amount of times I have to deal with people who are like, well, you did this in the thumbnail and you put the NDP going all the way down, and sorry, my bad, man. My bad, How much is that? Is like just politics related, or like, does that happen with everything?
No. Oh, I mean, like, I worked at the Washington Post for like 5 years, and like people just only would read the headlines and would react to what the headline was. And, and like, this is the thing too, like headlines, book titles, like so often the writer doesn't even come up with these. Like, these are things that like the publisher, the editor does because they think, it'll get the clicks or the views, or people will more likely to pick it up in the bookstore or whatever. So like it's really a curse, but it is what it is. I mean, I guess it works on some level. His book was a bestseller. It got people talking. It's kept him one of the most famous intellectuals in America for decades. And so, I mean, as much as I'm sure he resents aspects of this, he's probably pretty happy in the grand scheme of things that as many people know his name as they do. I mean, it's better to be controversial than to be ignored, right?
I guess it does some, man. It's like artists who hate their one-hit wonder, or like the one-hit song. It's like, I mean, it did launch you, but whatever.
And I'm sure they still cash the royalty checks that they get every time it's played in a
stupid
commercial.
Cry or something. Yeah.
I add their tears with their bills.
Yeah. No, I'll let all my tears fall into the Grammy right there, and maybe I can worry about that later. I don't know how much of your time I'm stealing, but would you want to...
maybe just a little bit longer, and then if you've got any, I should probably get going. I'm getting a bit hungry. It's dinner time here in fabulous Vancouver. I don't know if you can hear as well, but the bustling noise of the World Cup is trickling through my open window, because today is our first day as a host city actually hosting a game. The greatest superpowers in the world are playing today. Australia versus Turkey. So who will remain triumphant?
It's hard to talk about geopolitics that doesn't flow through those two countries.
I know. It's just, and I thought nothing could beat the previous match earlier today of Qatar versus Switzerland.
Jesus Christ! Talk about some real team sports there. If you listen closely on my stream, you can hear absolutely fucking nothing. Not a single thing happening anywhere else. Yeah. No, but if you want to right now, we can just head out. Like you want to eat or something like that, I'm cool with that.
Did you have any? I was just curious if it seemed like you were going through a list or something. If you had any final questions or
I'm not going through a list, but how could I forget? I was tasked with asking you one specific question. JJ Mccullough, would you play Fortnite with me?
Wait, I've never played Fortnite before.
Oh my goodness! Could I be your first time playing Fortnite? Could we play Fortnite sometime?
Yeah, sure. Of course.
There's a Fortnite stream
I promise I will not. I will not learn about Fortnite until we play it, because honestly,
That's gonna
like,
be
I've
tempting.
never.
That's gonna be very tempting.
I once did this with another kid your age, where like he wanted to be the first to show me how to play Minecraft,
Yeah.
and so he took my Minecraft virginity. But you can take my Fortnite virginity.
Okay, let's go,
I'm willing
dude.
to let you.
Someone please fucking clip that. I need that. Like, I need it tattooed, bro. You can take my Fortnite virginity, JJ Mccullough, 2026. This is a beautiful day. Yeah.
No, but it's been fun. It's been a good chat. You're a intelligent young man. I think we had some good conversation. I've always enjoyed your videos. I think you bring a lot of fun energy to Canadian politics, which there's not enough content about. There's not enough commentary on. I remember when I started my YouTube channel, like 11 years ago, I thought that there would be like a lot of other people kind of trying to get into the Canadian space, but there really hasn't been. And that kind of bothers me, not because I'm some great nationalist and because I think, oh, there's been a colonization of the Canadian mind by American stuff. American stuff is very important, and Canadians are not wrong to want to talk about it. But I think that Canadian stuff is interesting as well and is important as well.
Especially for Americans.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, Americans love hearing about Canadian stuff. Like, there's this kind of stereotype that Americans are like very sheltered and ignorant and don't care about the rest of the world. But like, a huge part of my audience is Americans that like want me to make more Canadian stuff because they want to learn more about what's going on in Canada. And Canada, because our countries are so similar, like, Canadians can teach Americans important lessons in the same way that Americans can teach Canadians important lessons. Like, the countries are so similar, and the way we think and talk about politics is so similar that, it's useful to have case studies about what works or doesn't work. Like, you did a good video. One of your recent videos was about, like, comparing and contrasting Avi Lewis with Mayor Mamdani in New York, right? Like, I thought that was a very good video, because I think that you have two politicians that nominally practice a similar sort of politics that, Avi Lewis clearly envies Mamdani. And so it's kind of like, well, is there any evidence that he's actually following his playbook? And I think you did a really masterful job of illustrating the ways in which Avi Lewis was not, in fact, learning the right lessons from Mamdani and was practicing a very different and much more kind of cringe flavor of engaging with the man on the street and all that. Very good video that I recommend people watch. Yeah. So no, like, and that type of content I think is great, and I hope you continue to make stuff of that sort, because I think it's good for both Canadians and Americans to watch.
I'm switching to OnlyFans in 6 months.
It's tough with her.
Yeah. No, but I thought it was important to make too, because especially in the NDP subreddit, bro, it's so annoying hearing everyone say, like, now is the time to fight. It's like, okay, man, let's say I agree with you completely. Socialism, gang, all this is time to fight. Some random fucking guy on the street, bro. Some guy was like, oh, but the most popular time for Jagmeet Singh was when he clapped back at someone who hurled some racist shit at him. It's like, oh, I wonder. Oh my god, bro. Yeah. Anyway, I think
some of this is just like, sorry.
I think you are also a bright young man. I think you've got an incredible future ahead of you for Canadian political content. Oh. Yeah.
Well, as I edge closer to retirement age.
Yeah. Well,
no, I appreciate that, and I'm glad you've enjoyed my content. I guess in theory we're on different ends of the political spectrum, but we think, I think, similarly on a lot of stuff. And as much as it's sort of cliche to say, I think it's useful when people can just kind of have kind of fair conversations about politics in a kind of objective way that's not fixated on winning points and all of that. So no, it's been good, and I can tell, like, in the same way that I try to be objective and try to get at the truth, I get the sense that that's the thing that's motivating you as well. So
yeah, I really appreciate that. Oh, thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. Anyway, I'm gonna let you eat. I haven't eaten anything since this morning because I didn't want to hypothetically go to the washroom on a stream with a 1 million subscriber YouTuber. So I wanted to go eat too. But I'll.
All right, my friend.
I'll talk to you later, man. Bye bye.
Right, have fun. Peace out. See ya.
See ya. That was it, you guys. That was the JJ stream. We're gonna take his Fortnite virginity very soon. Isn't that crazy? I'm gonna take JJ Mccullough's Fortnite virginity. Isn't that crazy? I'm taking his Fortnite virginity. I gotta get back into Fortnite. It's been years since I played Fortnite. Like I said, you are amazing. Hell yeah. I cannot wait to play fucking Fortnite with JJ Mccullough. I thank you. Good stream. I'm proud of you, man. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it. We're gonna be doing a fucking JJ Mccullough Fortnite stream in the near future. In the near future, guys. I love that conversation. That was easily like my favorite stream so far. I love you guys so much, but it's very nice to hear someone not suggesting, not saying like, Hudson, ask him how far he can squirt, like on camera. It's like, okay, guys, come on. I love you guys to death, but it's nice to have a serious conversation like that. Look, I know the video's over, but I just wanted to say something. I wanted to say, it's late at night right now. It's 4 a.m. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's ever watched one of my videos or subscribed or shared with a friend or something like that, or done anything in any way to make sure that I can keep making my little silly little Canadian political videos. It means a lot to me. I've been watching JJ Mccullough videos for like a decade now. And just getting to the point where I could do a video with him was, it meant a lot to me, and I really appreciate that I am able to do this because of people like you who've decided to watch to the end of this video. I'm gonna check the retention and you know, see if anyone was able to do it, but it means a lot to me, like a lot. I really appreciate it. So, thank you very much. This is the outro for today. Bye-bye. You guys weren't as much of a cat ears. Fine for you people. Just for you people. You guys were so well behaved for 2.5 hours. You guys were so well behaved for 2.5 hours. I will put on the cat ears. For free, by the way, for free. Usually I charge you money and like sanity, but here you guys go. Thanks, babe. That's my girlfriend, by the way, you guys. My girlfriend likes it. She goons to my stream, probably.